musician was disclosed today. Jim Morrison, 27 years old, lead singer of The Doors. His manager said Morrison died 6 days ago in Paris, either of a heart attack or pneumonia, but the death was kept secret to avoid a sensation.
Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of the enormously popular rock band Nirvana, is dead at the age of 27. More now from NBC's Brian Williams.
The international music industry is in shock with the death of rock star Michael Hutchence. The body of the INXS lead singer was discovered in a Sydney hotel room late this morning.
The Hollywood coroner says an overdose of narcotics is responsible for the death of the well-known rock singer Janis Joplin. Miss Joplin was found dead in her bedroom last night.
Exactly what happened inside the iconic Beverly Hilton remains a mystery. Paramedics raced to the 4th floor and found a lifeless Whitney Houston inside her hotel room bathtub.
All of these artists died of accidental overdoses, and they all had a music career that was going down. And when you watch the rest of this video, you're gonna see what I'm bringing up today is what nobody wanna talk about. So share the video.
Both the Los Angeles Times and CBS News are both now reporting that Michael Jackson has died.
And it always happened when the artist is trying to get their sovereignty. When they go to, you know what? I just don't have to talk that much. I'm just gonna let the DVD play.
I don't think many people at first glance would regard being a popular musician to be particularly deadly. But looking at the data, we see something rather peculiar. According to a study conducted by the University of Sydney, which sampled 13,000 different artists across 7 decades, it was noted that a popular musician's life expectancy was up to 25 years shorter comparable to the general population. Furthermore, accidental death rates were between 5 and 10 times greater, suicide rates were between 2 and 7 times greater, and homicide rates were up to 8 times greater. The study suggests an average life expectancy for musicians that are male to be in the late 50s and women in their early 60s. At first glance, these numbers are hard to contextualize, so let me give you something to compare it to. This is the same life expectancy you'd expect to see for a police officer in Buffalo, which has been labeled the most dangerous city in New York. Or if we're talking about the 90s, a male musician has a shorter life expectancy than a coal miner in China in the 1980s.
And people, this just ain't no coincidence. There's no way these numbers should be true unless there's some secret foul play going on in the industry. Yo, this industry is a group of mob members, and they are killing motherfuckers all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if 90% of all these artists' death is mafioso, nigga. It's some contract shit. You worth more dead than alive. Listen, man, y'all gotta look at these statistics that this man's saying. These statistics made me say, nigga, I don't wanna be no rapper with no deal today. Hell no. You could do it yourself. Cause if you under these labels, they got a death clause. They killing these niggas. There's no way you can tell me this ain't got nothing to do with everybody got, nigga, I'm not blaming it on Jay Prince. I'm telling you, this an industry hit, nigga. It's staged and everybody involved. And nigga, look at these statistics that you about to hear. Look at these statistics. This don't make no sense.
Particularly deadly. But looking at the data, we see something rather... I don't think many people at first glance would regard being a popular musician to be particularly deadly. But looking at the data, we see something rather peculiar. According to a study conducted by the University of Sydney, which sampled 13,000 different artists across 7 decades, it was noted that a popular musician's life expectancy was up to 25 years shorter comparable to the general population. Furthermore, accidental death rates were between 5 and 10 times greater, suicide rates were between 2 and 7 times greater, and homicide rates were up to 8 times greater.
Now ask yourself, out of all these artists in the game, artists die more from accidental death than anybody else in the population. People that don't make no sense. You got people working in coal mines, you got people building bridges, you got people working on skyscrapers, and rappers got the highest number of accidental death over motherfuckers that's working at construction sites. Motherfuckers that's dealing with bombs and explosives and all that. Pilots that's going up there doing flips and shit, loops and all this in the air. And an artist, the artist got the highest percentage of accidental death. You better open up your damn eyes. Think of what I said and open them eyes up. Man, let me quit pausing it.
Something rather peculiar. According to a study conducted by the University of Sydney, which sampled 13,000 different artists across 7 decades, it was noted that a popular musician's life expectancy was up to 25 years shorter comparable to the general population. Furthermore, accidental death rates were between 5 and 10 times greater, suicide rates were between 2 and 7 times greater, and homicide rates were up to 8 times greater. The study suggests an average life expectancy for musicians that are male to be in the late 50s and women in the early 60s. At first glance, these numbers are hard to contextualize, so let me give you something to compare it to. This is the same life expectancy you'd expect to see for a police officer in Buffalo, which has been labeled the most dangerous city in New York. Or if we're talking about the 90s, a male musician has a shorter life expectancy than a coal miner in China in the 1980s. These numbers make it clear as day that the true price of fame in the music industry is up to 25 years off your life. But that's not to say that fame is deadly across the board. In another study that sampled 1,000 different notable people from 2009 to 2011 from all professions, they found that those notable for their work in business, politics, or military generally lived longer than the national average.
Oh my God! So let me get this straight. All of our artists are guaranteed to shorten their life by 25 years. And this don't matter if you're a gangster rapper, a R&B singer. Remember, Whitney Houston didn't do no drill rap. Whitney Houston was a singer. And she faced the same fate, bro. This some mob shit. It don't matter. Once you get in the game, that's 25 years off of your life. That's the price of fame. That's what the stats show. Now, if you were to become a politician, it's gonna add about 30 years onto your life. This means that these people controlling who live and die every day. It ain't no random deaths. Well, of course it's random deaths, people get killed, but when you get to these highest levels, most of these deaths be planned and plotted out, and it ain't no randomness happening. And just think about that these politicians gonna outlive everybody. These numbers ought to show you the people that's responsible for orchestrating over all these industries and stuff, they live the longest. And the gladiators that's in the doggone Coliseum fighting, the rappers and all them, their life is short. And the doggone Caesar got an insurance policy out on all of his gladiators. And guess what? When the gladiator die, he bring the Caesar more money because the Caesar make a statue of that gladiator. And everybody come and give so much money to that gladiator after he die, he make more than what he ever made his whole career. This was going on back in Rome. This is called human sacrifice. Even to see, because all of them gladiators was his slaves and prisoners. If he had to bring out the executioner to execute one, because he's saying, look, gladiator such and such is worth more to my kingdom dead than alive. You know, we find out if we kill him, the people will worship and glorify his statue and actually give his statue more money than they giving his body in the ring. And we don't gotta pay his statue.
Oh.
They've been finding this out in Rome. Now watch this, let's play the video.
While writers, performers, and other creative types were only noted to have their lives shortened by a year. So what is going on with the music industry in particular? While we've established that the music industry is particularly deadly, the vast majority of the literature on the phenomena seems to isolate this to just one or two things, such as the added stresses from fame or the ease of access to substance, or that creative types tend to be more predisposed to mental illness. While there's no denying that these factors definitely play a role in this phenomena, perhaps there's a bit more to this story. While much of the formal research on this topic scrutinizes what is wrong with the artist as an individual, perhaps it's better in this case to focus on what is going on within the industry as a whole. Because if you shift focus away from the individual to the industry, and you pause for a moment to think about the financial incentives of the music world, you'll notice something incredibly concerning. Music is one of the few industries on the planet where someone's work is worth significantly more to a company after their passing.
Oh my God!
The financial incentives of the music world, you'll notice something incredibly concerning. Music is one of the few industries on the planet where someone's work is worth significantly more to a company after their passing. Generations are remembered by the art that they leave behind, and the easiest way to be remembered is to be hailed as a legend from that time period. A premature death can take an artist from a good artist to a legend, which can in some cases solidify an artist's recording catalog to be a cash cow for decades to come. Think about this for a moment. When an artist signs his name...
Hey, anybody saying that this shit is a lie, no they motherfucking
Stupid.
nigga can't tell me rappers ain't dying, cause guess what? I believe my eyes, homeboy. I'm seeing these rappers get killed every other week. P&B Rock, Duke Deuce. Nigga, even in my town, we ain't even got a lot of rappers from Alabama. We only had 2 rappers to blow up, and that was Rich Boy and Doe B, and one of them died. I bet you everybody in the chat room live in a city where they know a rapper that died. I bet you everybody in my chat room right now, you can name a big rapper out of your city right now that died. Type his name in the chat room so the naysayers can quit trolling, man. Type that shit, y'all. Cause this gonna show you, man, how real this shit is. Watch how many folks type a name down there. Type the name in your city of the rapper that died in your city. I know what I'm doing. Watch how many folks type this shit. Come on, make it rain. Cause I know that's damn near 80% of the chat finna type a name. Some of you gonna be typing the same name cause you in the same joint. Show these naysayers this ain't a game. Bro, every other week a rapper getting shot the fuck up like that ain't even the debate. The debate is, are they dying from regular shit or is it sacrifice? Anybody debating if the rapper dying, I'm like,
Stupid. Stupid.
that's not even a debate. If the rappers are dying or not. We want to talk about the situation surrounding the death. We on an advanced level. We ain't nobody over here questioning if rappers dying or not. Hell no, we ain't doing that. I wouldn't dare debate a nigga if rappers dying or not. You know how stupid that'll make me look?
Name on the dotted line to a record company. The record company will in many cases own all of the masters for the songs recorded under that contract. And when it scrutinizes what is wrong with the artist as an individual, perhaps it's better in this case to focus on what is going on within the industry as a whole. Because if you shift focus away from the individual to the industry, and you pause for a moment to think about the financial incentives of the music world, you'll notice something incredibly concerning. Music is one of the few industries on the planet where someone's work is worth significantly more to a company after their passing.
Oh shit. Sorry about the echo. Who was that? Lone Wolf, David Jones, Leah, is Isaiah. Thank y'all. And keep sharing the video. Let's get the numbers up, because today gonna be the most important thing that we watch concerning this young brother's sacrifice is what I'm gonna call it. Now let's get it without the echo. Sorry about the echo. Let's go.
Such as the added stresses from fame or the ease of access to substance, or that creative types tend to be more predisposed to mental illness. While there's no denying that these factors definitely play a role in this phenomena, perhaps there's a bit more to this story. While much of the formal research on this topic scrutinizes what is wrong with the artist as an individual, perhaps it's better in this case to focus on what is going on within the industry as a whole. Because if you shift focus away from the individual to the industry, and you pause for a moment to think about the financial incentives of the music world, you'll notice something incredibly concerning. Music is one of the few industries on the planet where someone's work is worth significantly more to a company after their passing. Generations are remembered by the art that they leave behind, and the easiest way to be remembered is to be hailed as a legend from that time period. A premature death can take an artist from a good artist to a legend, which can in some cases solidify an artist's recording catalog to be a cash cow for decades to come.
Did you hear that? While these artists are alive, they don't get no roses. It's so hard to go get big on the charts. But soon as a rapper die, oh, all of his music start charting, not just some of it, and it stay that way for a couple of years. When a rapper die, no matter if he good or talented or not, death sells. That's what we gotta realize. This isn't music culture anymore. It's death culture. It's demon time. And guess who benefit off of the death culture? The labels, because all of you niggas worth more dead than alive. Why would a label who put millions of dollars behind a young boy allow him to move reckless and risk his life like that? Even if you go to the NFL, nigga, your coach and the team owner gonna tell you it's certain safety precautions you got to take when you away from the field. And if you die a certain way from your reckless, dumb behavior, your team and all them won't even, like for example, I wouldn't be surprised if athletes got insurance policies on them. But what I'm saying is, they told us in the military how to move when we go off base, when we overseas, because the military wanted to protect their assets. The military had secret investigators out there in these cities, and not only investigating Americans, but investigating everybody else. But check this out, y'all. It's called protecting the assets. Now, guess what? I'm gonna show you what don't make sense about labels. Labels know that you just bought this young nigga for about, say, 10 million. You 10 million in the hole with this little nigga. He got a big, good contract, because a $10 million contract, nigga, that's unheard of today. But anyway, let's give the little nigga that. $10 million contract. And you don't care if he die. He ain't recouped you no shit yet. This nigga made, this motherfucker made one album, he already dead. And the label just replaced that nigga. They don't lose none of that shit, because all of them money and assets, it go back to the label, because his death is a breach of the contract. His family don't get that money. Not only do the label get all that shit back when he died, they own all his music, his name, his likeness, and they finna get a big insurance check. And you wanna, that's why a rapper is worth more dead than alive. And on top of all that, if the nigga's music wasn't selling, after he died, his shit gonna be selling like a motherfucker. And for at least a decade. Come on, man, if I was a damn label owner, that'll cross my mind like, well, shit now. No, let them little niggas beef and kill each other. Fuck that. Let they ass go. But that's our artist though. We gonna let our artist die? See, then we'll have to game this nigga on how the game go. Like, listen, bro. Yeah, we gonna let his ass die. Let me show you how much money we gonna be making, bro. Gotta laugh to keep from goddamn crying. Yeah, this shit is evil. And I really had passions to be in the music industry. But not after knowing all this. Let's get it.
Be hailed as a legend from that time period, a premium industry as a whole, to mental illness. While there's no denying that these factors definitely play a role in this phenomena, perhaps there's a bit more to the story. While much of the formal research on this topic scrutinizes what is wrong with the artist as an individual, perhaps it's better in this case to focus on what is going on within the industry as a whole. Because if you shift focus away from the individual to the industry, and you pause for a moment to think about the financial incentives of the music world, you'll notice something incredibly concerning. Music is one of the few industries on the planet where someone's work is worth significantly more to a company after their passing. Generations are remembered by the art that they leave behind, and the easiest way to be remembered is to be hailed as a legend from that time period. A premature death can take an artist from a good artist to a legend, which can in some cases solidify an artist's recording catalog to be a cash cow for decades to come. Think about this for a moment. When an artist signs his name on the dotted line to a record company, the record company will in many cases own all of the masters for the songs recorded under that contract. And when an artist signs to a major label, it's safe to say that their death is in many ways factored into the initial investment. And in many ways, after an artist has peaked in popularity, there becomes an awkward point in their career where the artist is worth more to them dead than alive.
Think about that now. Once an artist has peaked, they reach their prime, they ain't gonna get no higher, it's just about to be downhill. That's when a label wanna freeze them in time and make them a historical figure by killing them. Right when you reach that's why people, it's crazy, like Jimi Hendrix. All of these people like Juice WRLD, right when they reach that prime, that peak of popularity and fame, their life is cut short suddenly. That's what this man's saying. He showed you the numbers earlier. If you think all this is a coincidence, then guess what? You ain't ready to wake up.
To a record company, the record company will in many cases own all of the masters for the songs recorded under that contract. And when an artist signs to a major label, it's safe to say that their death is in many ways factored into the initial investment. And in many ways, after an artist has peaked in popularity, there becomes an awkward point in their career where the artist is worth more to them dead than alive.
Let me show you how this works. Guess what? What's that dude name who died, who was with the Beatles? Lennon? Ain't that his name? Type it in there real quick. First one, type it, I'ma shout you out. Hurry up, give it to me. What was the famous Beatles artist that died? I should know this shit, by the way, but I smoke too much. Come on. What was the Beatles artist that died? Was it Lennon? Come on, who gonna be the first one to put it? Come on, chat. The Beatle artist, John Lennon. Thank you, Gemini Brand Reviews, Digital Vine, Chungus Can, Big Scoop. Hey, Jada Pusher, Michael Pratt, Citizen Man. Okay, too many of y'all now, hold on. But listen, hear me out. Watch this shit. The Beatles was about to break up when they was at their prime. They was arguing, fighting, and the label knew that. And guess what, nigga? They sacrificed John Lennon. He was the sacrifice. Bro, look at, I think what happened with the Migos is the Migos broke up, bro. And there was no uphill climb for the Migos group. People, what we're witnessing with the Migos was what the man just said. They had reached their peak and they started to split up. just like the Beatles. Don't you find it kind of eerie that we called Amigos the Black Beatles, and the same shit happened to the Beatles? It's happened to the Migos to the T, my nigga. Oh my God! That ought to be some creepy shit that lets you know this ain't no game, man. They called themselves the Black Beatles, and Takeoff was John Lennon. And right when the Beatles was about to break up, nigga, they had to do a sacrifice. But like the man said, when your group falling off, everybody that outgrew each other, you not finna be topping your last work. You know it's time to watch your back, man. This the mob, bro. I know this sound crazy, but the mafia owns the industry, and this is just how it go, bro. We finna play this shit.
To a record company. The record company will in many cases own all of the masters for the songs recorded under that contract. And when an artist signs to a major label, it's safe to say that their death is in many ways factored into the initial investment. And in many ways, after an artist has peaked in popularity, there becomes an awkward point in their career where the artist is worth more to them dead than alive.
Him due to the business that he did.
Yeah.
And I can't even say mad, is that they didn't have a part of it. Let's be real. I'm gonna say it out there straight for everybody listening. My uncle didn't die. He was murdered.
Y'all know who this is, right? This is Siggy Jackson. This is Michael Jackson's nephew. People, listen to this man, because guess what? The Jackson family, it's a couple of family members that was in on the shit, and there was a couple of family members that ain't in on it. Boy, this music industry ain't what y'all think. Listen at Siggy Jackson. Listen at this.
Mad at him due to the business that he did.
Yeah.
And I can't even say mad, is that they didn't have a part of it. Let's be real. I'm gonna say it out there straight for everybody listening. My uncle didn't die. He was murdered. I feel the same thing about Prince. We're losing a lot of stars, because you have to remember, these are basically insurance policies. When he dies, whatever was owned by the company reverts back. We're not talking about $100,000. We're not talking about $1 million. We're talking about billions of dollars. Notice that when my uncle dies, why do you hear all his music? Why is there a Motown cartoon out now? Okay, well, obviously when my uncle was alive, he wasn't giving the rights to anybody. But when he dies, all of a sudden,
It's pretty incredible to me that all of us have kind of heard this anecdote about musicians dying at a young age, but every time this happens, nobody casts an ounce of skepticism about this kind of thing, or how much these people are worth dead. That, in my opinion, is the true dark side of the music industry. And it seriously does not help that social media in the modern day has made artists' deaths even more lucrative. As one Nielsen executive had stated in 2016, if Earth, Wind & Fire's Maurice White passed away 10 years ago, you might have read about it in a paper and then waited until there was a store open, he said. Now the news cycle travels extremely fast, and you get more awareness. The instant gratification is there. You can buy into or stream it, and it magnifies the consumption. Now instant gratification is definitely.
Now, this is a note that's written by a top music executive. The man that's writing this stuff that he talking about now, he's a big dude in the music industry, and he's wrote this shit talking about how lucrative death is when the artist died. People, this is how these music execs are talking about these children. Like, ooh, he'll be a big bag if he die, or if he die. Man, it's some crazy shit. And if y'all tired of me pausing the video, drop a 1 if I'm pausing it too much.
Music industry. And it seriously does not help that social media in the modern day has made artists' deaths even more lucrative. As one Nielsen executive had stated in 2016, If Earth, Wind & Fire's Maurice White passed away 10 years ago, you might have read about it in a paper and then waited until there was a store open, he said. Now the news cycle travels extremely fast, and you get more awareness. The instant gratification is there. You can buy it or stream it, and it magnifies the consumption. Now, instant gratification is definitely an interesting word choice from this Nielsen executive, especially considering some of his other comments in the same article. This was different from other years, Dave Bakula, Nielsen's Senior Vice President of Industry Insights, told the Post. The news cycle is very viral. I've never seen a year like this before. The number of big-name artists passing away. The music industry is getting an extra boost from the celebration, he added. Notice that the author of the article here had to add this for context. But obviously I am nitpicking a bit. All of you probably know what this executive is talking about. Whenever an artist passes away, everyone comes out to show their respects on social media. And this effect has an uncanny ability to run up sales numbers. While in recent history it's been labeled the Prince effect, we have known for quite some time that an artist passing could be lucrative. But just how lucrative it is, we are just now getting to measure the effects more closely in the modern day. One paper titled Music, Death, and Profits lays this all out for us. Notably, this was the first study of its kind to show the long-term effects of this phenomenon. In their study that monitored 81 artists who passed away from 2015 to 2017, they found something pretty disturbing. Our findings show that a rate of sales does not return to pre-death levels, but instead is in most instances persistently higher even several years after the death shock occurs. Album sales leapt us.
I'm sorry, I know y'all say I'm pausing it too much, but I gotta rewind this shit. Man, this part is so deep, it's coming out of the horse's mouth.
Just now getting to measure the effects more closely in the modern day. One paper titled Music, Death, and Profits lays this all out for us. Notably, this was the first study of its kind to show the long-term effects of this phenomenon. In their study that monitored 81 artists who passed away from 2015 to 2017, they found something pretty disturbing. Our findings show that a rate of sales does not return to pre-death levels, but instead is in most instances persistently higher even several years after the death shock occurs. Album sales leapt a staggering 226% on average, just on the day the artist died, and they doubled overall on average for the first 100 days. For bigger artists like Prince, the effect was even more pronounced, as he saw a 16,000% increase, while other large artists saw very staggering numbers as well. Furthermore, looking at the album sales for other rappers who have died young, we see that almost all of them see commercial success they never saw in their own lifetime. As if the financial incentives weren't already way too far in the wrong direction, this actually gets a hell of a lot worse. Because there's a clause in record contracts that allows record labels to cash in even more after an artist's passing. This has been going on since the early days of the music industry, and it's quite literally a standard practice. It's called the death clause, or the non-performance clause. Now, this is one of those lesser-known details in regards to record contracts, but the former manager of the Grateful Dead, Hank Harrison, wrote about this some years back. Essentially, it goes something like this. Companies shall have the right to secure insurance equivalent to 10 times the estimated value of the artist's earnings from any source of revenue for company's sole benefit. Companies shall be allowed to employ any insurance carrier or combination of the same to assure this benefit and need not consult or require signature compliance from the artist. Companies shall keep such information confidential, except that the company may disclose information to the applicable insurance carriers or as required by law. Artist or artist's estate shall have no right to review or claim the benefit of any such policy obtained by the company.
Oh my God! That shit right there ought to make no nigga want to get in the music game. This basically saying not only can they put out an insurance policy on the artist, they ain't got to tell you neither. Damn.
And to quote what Hank Harrison later wrote in this article, he states, "In short, here is what a death clause does in my humble opinion. If an artist fails to perform or pay back advances, the artist becomes more profitable dead. Today, the hit clause still exists. But it is more subtle, and whereas it used to be worth thousands, it's now potentially worth billions. Labels invest millions in new talent, and the insurance policy is a protection against loss or a way of collecting projected profits for music, t-shirts, books, foreign rights, and everything else in all forms. Now, I want to clarify one thing here about the death clause, and it's that this type of life insurance, also known as key man insurance, is actually a standard practice in other industries as well. And depending on how you look at this, it's honestly just a smart business move given how much money they invested into them in the first place. But normally when an employee dies in other industries, there is a pretty significant loss of revenue, and this insurance is designed to make it so the company can stay afloat until they find a replacement. But in the music industry, this is just them double dipping. Now, in case you're unfamiliar, record deals are structured like a loan, also known as an advance. A certain amount the artist gets to keep for living expenses, and the rest will usually cover the cost of making an album as well as marketing it. While the specifics will vary from deal to deal, the premise is pretty much the same across the board. Only after the label is paid back in full will the artist receive any royalties on the music recorded during that time. And assuming all goes well with the contract, the process will repeat with a new contract and new debt. If they don't succeed though, or paying back the label is taking too long, or the artist is trying to get out of the deal, then the death clause conveniently helps the label collect. What's more, as bad of a reputation as record labels may have, they aren't the only ones with perverse incentives. The artist also has to consider that his own loved ones might be out to get him as well, presuming any family members may be included in their will. And if that wasn't bad enough, it has become a far more common practice.
And people, that's what happened to Michael Jackson. See, these labels know that your family gonna eat with them if you die. And they got people in your fucking family that'll help get your ass knocked off. And you think it's a game, but when you understand the kind of big money that they talking about when you die, we think blood sacrifice just is the artist sacrificing their family member. But blood sacrifice can mean that the family members and the label sacrificing the artist too. Oh my God! Let me rewind it. Y'all better pay attention.
Death clause conveniently helps the label collect.
Giving up.
What's more, as bad of a reputation as record labels may have, they aren't the only ones with perverse incentives. The artist also has to consider that his own loved ones might be out to get him as well, presuming any family members may be included in their will. And if that wasn't bad enough, it has become a far more common practice for artists nowadays to sell parts of their recording catalog on brokerage sites like Royalty Exchange. And I'm just going to flat out say this right now, it's only a matter of time before something bad happens with one of these Royalty Exchange platforms. As one article from MarketWatch stated, buy some of the rights to a rock star's music and you're likely to see a big bump in your royalties if he or she dies suddenly. It creates some awkward incentives. Don't be surprised if this turns up as the plot to a Hollywood thriller sometime soon. So yeah, nowadays basically an artist has to worry about literally anyone and everyone potentially having a price on their head.
When you think of everything he just said, why would you just be moving around nonchalantly? I'd be bulletproof everything. If you look at the statistics he showed for artists' life expectancy, and then think of everything he just said, how even your loved ones got an incentive to get you knocked off. You're worth more dead than alive when you reach your peak of your success. Let me tell you something about the music industry. There's a connection between you reaching the height of success and then guess what? Dying. You can't even live that shit to enjoy the fruits of your labor, because the label know when you reach your height, you work. That's when the death clause shit kick in. Look what happened to Aaliyah. Aaliyah was all in Hollywood with Jackie Chan, Romeo Must Die, top charting artists. Aaliyah had reached her peak. Aaliyah had reached her peak, and look at what happened. Right when she reached her peak, we can do this all day. Look at Celine. What was the Mexican singer who died from Selena? Sade, Salik, one of them. I always get them mixed up. But you know what I'm saying. You can point out a bunch of people, they reach their height like Juice WRLD. And then you get knocked off. That ain't no coincidence. Listen what this man said.
Now that you're aware of what a death clause is, I think it's important that I give you a textbook example of this so you can see how this usually plays out. And just know for now, while we will discuss many other mysterious deaths in the music industry later on in this video, for now I'd like to draw your attention to the story of Bobby Fuller. After Fuller moved to LA in 1964, he was signed to a record label by the name of Del-Fi Records, owned by producer Bob Keane. Keane was also the band's manager, and given the fact that it was called the Bobby Fuller 4, Bobby was the frontman. Shortly after the band had scored several hits, like their cover of I Fought the Law, on July 18, 1966, Bobby's success in the music industry would be cut short. After receiving a mysterious phone call in the early hours of the morning, Bobby was believed to have left his Los Angeles apartment at 3 a.m. Before Bobby left, his road manager had been half asleep watching TV in the living room. He vaguely remembered that Bobby might have been going to see a girl named Melody that night. After heading out from the apartment, he took his mother's Oldsmobile and he would set off into the night. As the day turned to morning, Bobby failed to meet up with the other members of his band for rehearsal later that day. Around 5 p.m., a couple other visiting musicians had come to see Bobby at his apartment. They claimed that when they were driving up, Bobby's mother's car was not there. Bobby's mother, Lorraine, also noted this. She had been keeping an eye out all day for Bobby to come home. After the two visitors came into Bobby's apartment, Bobby's mom then went to go get the mail. To her surprise, the car was there. Upon closer inspection, she found Bobby lifeless inside of the car. He was found lying across the seat, where the entire car reeked of the smell of gasoline. There was a 2.5-gallon gas can found below the driver's seat, and a gas hose was also found nearby.
Y'all need to really listen to this story that's going on now. Please pay attention.
Upon discovering Bobby in this state, Lorraine called the police. And when they arrived, they took a quick look at the body, and they ruled that Bobby had taken his own life from drinking gasoline.
That don't even supposed to happen in law enforcement. Two cops showed up and said, oh, he drunk gas, that's how he died, and that was it. See, he about to prove that when these rappers die, the city, the county, the police, and everybody be in on it. Y'all are so naive, man. Why you think that the Houston Police Department said we gotta protect the music industry? Go look at that conference. He said we gotta protect the music industry, not protect these young rappers that got this death clause on them with these Jews putting this insurance policy on them and making them beef with each other to kill each other so everybody get paid. This man about to show you how nigga the police getting paid off this rapper death. Everybody, nigga, the mob own all these politicians. Listen at this story right here.
The authorities quickly discarded the gas can and called it a day. The car was never dusted for prints. The police didn't interview anybody, and all in all, it was an open and shut case.
Do you think they would have did that if it was an officer died? Nigga, they didn't take no prints, didn't interview nobody. That's a hit from the mob, nigga. And everybody in on it, the police, everybody. This shit's deep, bro. This what's happening in Houston right now. Let's get it.
Later, it would be revealed through the autopsy that there was no gasoline found in Bobby's stomach, where the coroner later stated that Bobby had died due to inhalation of gasoline fumes, classifying Bobby's death instead as an accident, a finding that nobody...
Now, whoever died from inhaling gasoline, that's crazy. You smelt gas and died. I used to inhale gas all the time because I like the smell of it. Drop a one. I know that sound weird, but you're going to see a bunch of people drop a one if you liked it, the smell of gas. and you went through that little weird phase, like, and it ain't killed you. This seemed like somebody suffocated him with a rag over his face, and then it had gas on the rag, cause who gonna die like that? And then they put an accident, cause what I told you about the death clause, what did I tell you about the death clause? It gotta be an accident. Let's get it.
So found nearby. Upon discovering Bobby in this state, Lorraine called the police. And when they arrived, they took a quick look at the body, and they ruled that Bobby had taken his own life from drinking gasoline. And the authorities quickly discarded the gas can and called it a day. The car was never dusted for prints, the police didn't interview anybody, and all in all, it was an open and shut case. Later, it would be revealed through the autopsy that there was no gasoline found in Bobby's stomach, where the coroner later stated that Bobby had died due to inhalation of gasoline fumes, classifying Bobby's death instead as an accident, a finding that nobody, not least his own mother and family, agreed. Multiple witnesses noted that it appeared that Bobby had been beaten up badly and had a broken finger. There was blood found on his shirt and face. Multiple witnesses, including Lorraine, also made the comment that it looked like he had been dragged on the ground, and his body showed various scrapes and injuries. The coroner claims that they were mistaken. He claimed he found no bruises, no broken bones, and no cuts, or evidence of a beating. Instead stating, body in full rigor, skin slipped due to high temperature in car. Bobby's body had been found in a full state of rigor mortis, meaning that he had been dead for some time. Considering that the car hadn't been in the lot for more than 15 minutes, this quite literally made it impossible that he could have driven up on his own. Given the sheer amount of gasoline found in the car, it appears that someone had been just moments away from setting it ablaze. According to an article from Spin magazine, in 1983, Rick Stone reported that he was sure Bobby's head had been doused with gasoline. To this day, Jim Reese maintains that he saw a half-burned book of matches and a burn on the vinyl of the backseat of the car. Assuming the car failed to light, this meant that the persons responsible were lurking nearby.
Hey, soon as this go off, I'm gonna give y'all a fire theory again to tie this in some more with the Migos. Let's go.
Rather interesting when you factor in that Bob Keane just so happened to magically appear at the scene within moments. Now, Bobby's story is essentially a cautionary tale of what can happen in the music industry. And to quote Rod Crosby, the lead singer for the band The Intruders, Bobby Fuller was vulnerable by virtue of his honesty and naivety. If he had been a streetwise, bitter person, maybe he would have survived. He lived on a high plane of idealism and fantasy. He was swept into the maelstrom of rock decadence and was a victim of a ruthless business. Essentially, Bobby had become worth more dead than alive behind the scenes. He had a life insurance policy taken out on him for about $850,000, while all the other members of the band had policies at around $100,000 each. In the days before his death,
Y'all peep that? He had the highest insurance policy out. And they ruled it an accident because that's the only way the label could cash out on insurance.
He was swept into the maelstrom of rock decadence and was a victim of a ruthless business. Essentially, Bobby had become worth more dead than alive behind the scenes. He had a life insurance policy taken out on him for about $850,000, while all the other members of the band had policies at around $100,000 each. In the days before his death, the band was on the verge of breaking up. One member was getting ready to return to his family after touring. Another member was likely to have been drafted into Vietnam. Infighting was rampant, leading to Bobby replacing one of the members, and the two musicians from earlier were new potential replacements for his current band.
Now I'm gonna tie that into the Migos. See what he said? The band was breaking up. When these bands go to breaking up and they reach their peak, the label wanna know, how am I gonna ensure my cash cow going on, to keep going? The band member with the highest insurance and policy gonna be the sacrifice, and the other two, where they're gonna get a newfound fame. Now watch what happened with the Migos. I'm not saying that the Migos killed their own brother. I'm saying when you sign these record deals, that's just part of us joining the mob. If me and 3 of my niggas join a label and I say, look, man, this is how this game works. If shit don't go right and boom, 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 somebody got to die. This the mob we joining. Somebody got to die. We don't know who it's gonna be. And the label don't tell you who they got the highest insurance policy on, because we just read that part, that the label can keep all that secret. So it's like a who name come up game when we go to falling off and breaking up, like the Migos start breaking up and going down. Now what's gonna happen now is Takeoff, all of his shit finna skyrocket on the charts and money and all that. And with what we just read that, and then what'll happen, the other 2 Migos gonna get back together and they gonna be doing shows that's gonna be hella big, because not only are they getting back together, but they brother was sacrificed. Now guess what? What if like with the Killer Cam dude, who they said was the killer? Everybody said that the dude who killed Takeoff, he got killed. But guess what? Ain't no body though. We want to see the body. They can be hiding that dude. And bro, this shit, man, how do we know these artists don't get hid somewhere? And like, you know, it's a lot of people that had insurance policies and they received insurance, but they faked they death. Tupac was another artist that had reached his height, and when he started to fall down and fall off, they did him like Michael Jackson. And he named himself Machiavelli, somebody that faked their death. It's possible that the artist can be in on it with the media and the label to fake a nigga death and to get everybody cash in, and he go live out his life on a uncharted island somewhere with the rest of with Pop Smoke, Michael Jackson, and the rest of them. Now, I ain't gonna say that this is somebody faking a death. My channel is about exploring all of the bizarre theories that can be, and I'm gonna maintain that over here. But I do want to say, rest in peace, Takeoff. I'm still going to reserve my right to think about this on a deep level, though. You know, because all of this can be possible in my eyes. If you look at what we're watching here with this documentary, everything we watching, the Migos fit this shit. They was a group that reached their peak. They start falling off, breaking up, infighting, and the same shit happened, man. There's a fucking consistency with this pattern. There's a consistent pattern, man. We gotta pick this up. Let's go.
Maybe he would have survived. He lived on a high plane of idealism and fantasy. He was swept into the maelstrom of rock decadence and was a victim of a ruthless business. Essentially, Bobby had become worth more dead than alive behind the scenes. He had a life insurance policy taken out on him for about $850,000, while all of the other members of the band had policies at around $100,000 each. In the days before his death, the band was on the verge of breaking up. One member was getting ready to return to his family after touring. Another member was likely to have been drafted into Vietnam. Infighting was rampant, leading to Bobby replacing one of the members, and the 2 musicians from earlier were new potential replacements for his current band. Essentially, Bobby Fuller had had enough of his management, between them failing to fulfill orders for his recent single, and the fact that Bob Keane had been micromanaging their sound, often making artistic decisions, which led to their worst financial failure, the Magic Touch, which in spite of heavy promotion through payola, it still was not a commercial success. But that wasn't the only financial problem going on behind the scenes. The label had wanted Bobby to continue touring. He decided to bail on that. Had Bobby walked away, the label would have presumably incurred a large financial loss between the recent failure of the Magic Touch and the tour that was cut short. But if he were to conveniently die in an accident, let's say a mysterious car fire, then the label could easily turn a profit. Had the coroner ruled it being self-inflicted, the label would not have been able to collect due to a common clause in life insurance policies. Then in the months after, the coroner switched the death ruling to an accident, Conveniently, this was the most lucrative outcome for the label. Now, clearly there was something off about the way the police and the coroner handled this case. I should add that the police have never once refuted the timeline of events I've shared with you. But if you are a frequent viewer of this channel, you know that all too often when you see this type of behavior from officials, it's usually a pretty big hint that you're dealing with matters pertaining to organized crime. Additionally, in Bobby's case, when 2 private investigators were hired to look into his death, both of them quickly quit the case. Both refused to talk to the press, and one had claimed that they had been threatened. In the days after Fuller's death, 3 mysterious tough guy types showed up outside the apartment of another band member, Jim Reese. They had essentially broken into his apartment only to find that he wasn't there. Jim to this day swore he had no idea who they were, but it definitely concerned members of the group to the point that they were thinking that they could have been next. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So were there any ties to organized crime? Many sources on this subject bring up the silent partner in Bob Keene's business, a man by the name of Larry Nunes. Larry Nunes was essentially the man financing Fuller's career, and Nunes was the actual beneficiary who was sent to cash in on Fuller's death. Now the key word here is silent partner. Organized crime is notorious for using frontmen for almost all of their business dealings, and to quote the Chicago Tribune, as the schemes got more complicated, mobsters needed the help of lawyers, politicians, and frontmen with relatively clean criminal records. It was a Faustian bargain. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the term Faustian bargain, it essentially
I'm gonna read it to you.
means a deal with the devil. Throughout
A Faustian bargain is a pact whereby which a person trades something of supreme moral or spiritual importance, such as personal values. I'm gonna reread it. Because this is important. A Faustian bargain is a pact whereby a person trades something of supreme moral or spiritual importance, such as personal values or the soul, for some worldly or material benefit, such as knowledge, power, or riches. The term refers to the legend of Faust, a character in German folklore and literature who agrees to surrender his soul to an evil spirit after a certain period of time in exchange for otherwise unattainable knowledge and magical powers that give him access to all the world's pleasures. A Faustian bargain is made with the power that the bargainer recognizes as evil or amoral. Faustian bargains are by their nature tragic or self-defeating for the person who makes them, because what is surrendered is ultimately far more valuable than what is obtained, whether or not the bargainer appreciates that fact.
Throughout history, there have been a number of Faustian bargains, but in present day, you'll notice that almost every person who claims this comes from the entertainment industry.
You're still out here doing these songs, you know, you're still on tour.
I do, but I don't take it for granted.
Why do you still do it? Why are you still out here?
Well, it goes back to the destiny thing. You know, I made a bargain with it, you know, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my hand.
What was your bargain?
To get where I am now.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
with the chief commander.
On this earth?
And on this earth, and then in the world we can't see.
So there are archon beings that have been. See, the concept of wealth and power come from Egypt, and the Egyptians achieved immortality. And I'm not gonna go into all that. I'm gonna give you the red pill. There are some spirits among us that have been recycling themselves back to this earth for a couple of centuries now through different bodies. All right. And these are the ones that control who get rich and all that. They the ones created the magic, the science of money, currency, power, You know, they leprechaun god with his pot of gold and his shekels. He always would use his shekels as shackles to keep the soul in bondage. So the one of the original coins was being the shekel, and we dealing with money. Is this fiat currency is what keeps us in shackles and bondage. And if you watch the movie The Leprechaun, anytime he granted your wish, what you gave him in return was like your soul and all that. I want everybody to go back and watch all of those old Leprechaun movies, right? It was like Leprechaun 1, 2, 3. Watch that and it'll teach you a lot about these spiritual beings that these celebrities and stuff sign these pacts with. So the thing that we gotta realize is too many artists that's talking like what this man just said for us to just throw it off. For us to just throw it off like that. You know what I'm saying? Jay-Z said the same shit, how the Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Kanye said he sold his soul to the devil and it was a crappy deal. All he got was a happy meal, some shit like that. All of my favorite artists at some point have talked about a deal they did with the devil. And they tried to play it off like it's just a hot line. You know, it's just a fire punchline. But these folks got to tell you the truth. But that's called predictive programming, and it's a sick way of them thinking that they can free themselves of their karma because they told you. So it's like another way, it's like talking over your head too, because you like, man, that was just a hard line. Why everybody using that same line? It ain't hard when everybody, I sold my soul to the devil, and it ain't hard out there, everybody do it. So now it's just becoming a ritual now. Whether you said it on your record or in an interview like this brother did it, damn near 50 to 60% of artists got some kind of rhetoric about I sold my soul to the devil, and they saying it in a way like they don't really want you to take them serious, like I'm just playing. But nah, bro, too many of y'all just playing like that. Too many of y'all, that ain't a funny joke at this point, because everybody just playing there now with it.
Now, I should also let you know that Bob Dylan has quite literally been playing a never-ending.
Bob Dylan been playing a never-ending concert, man. Tell me that ain't some kind of fucking spiritual torture. And look at the way this man look. He looked like a fucking, like his spirit ain't even in his body. He looked like a spiritual slave that can't get out of this damn pact that he signed. And this man been doing, bro, this man is like, been on a world tour for over 20 years. Do you know how much that's slavery, dude? Listen at this thing. I gotta go back and watch this 60-minute interview with Bob Dylan. If y'all like this content, hit the like and share button, and I'll keep coming back with more videos like this on the music industry, and we can go through this interview with Bob Dylan on part 2, and we can go through the interview with Siggy Jackson, what he said about Michael Jackson, and we can start just doing part 2, part 3, and getting into this music industry thing. If you want that, drop a bomb, drop the fireballs, hit the like button.
For granted.
Why do you still do it? Why are you still out here?
Well, it goes back to the destiny thing. I made a tough bargain with it, you know, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my hand.
What was your bargain?
To get where I am now.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
with the chief commander.
On this earth?
And on this earth, and then in the world we can't see.
Now, I should also let you know that Bob Dylan has quite literally been playing a never-ending tour since 1988, adhering to a heavy booking schedule of 100 shows a year.
Do you understand what you hearing? Do you understand? Dude, young niggas ain't even doing this. And look at this dude, he just look wore out. I ain't gonna lie, I kind of feel sorry for Bob, man. Cause if this shit real, bro, this nigga look like whatever this spirit is really whipping his ass. Like, It's almost like he just wish it'll kill him already. But it's saying, no, nigga, I'ma keep you alive on a never-ending tour. And do you understand the strict hours of this tour? Bro, this is so crazy.
With the chief commander.
On this earth?
And on this earth, and then in the world we can't see.
Now, I should also let you know that Bob Dylan has quite literally been playing a never-ending tour since 1988, adhering to a heavy booking schedule of 100 shows a year. He crossed 3,000 shows in 2019, and despite him being 80 years old, his vocal performances becoming unpredictable, and him randomly changing the lyrics of his songs on a night-by-night basis to the point that they become unrecognizable, he's still touring. It sort of makes you wonder if there's something preventing him from retiring, especially given the fact that the overarching data on this industry shows that most musicians don't live to the age of retirement. But to be fair, perhaps he just really likes playing shows still, or perhaps he was saying this for publicity. And to be clear, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. There's definitely a lot of interpretations for this deal with the devil analogy, but all you need to know for now is the fact that at least one of these interpretations includes making a deal with the underworld. And going into this next section, I want to say that we will tie up the stories of Bob Keane and Larry Nunes and Bobby Fuller here in a bit. But for you to really see how the death clause fits into things, you need to understand the entanglements between organized crime and the music business. So we're going to explore a few of those, because Fuller's case is far from an isolated incident.
Tonight, the first of 5 segment 3 reports on what we have chosen to call crime rock. There's a lot of corruption in the music business because there's a lot of money in the music business, in records, cassettes, and in live performances. That kind of money attracts all kinds of unsavory characters who don't know much about music but do know a lot about crime. Brian Ross reports.
Police say much of the trouble for Rare Earth came from this man, Joe Ulo, a reputed mob enforcer from New York, who moved to California a few years ago and moved into the rock music business. One of his first targets was Rare Earth. In 1969, Rare Earth was on top. Its first album, a double platinum record, selling more than 2 million copies. The good times, the hit albums, and the big money only lasted for 3 years. And then, Rare Earth began having trouble paying its bills and traveling expenses. Police say that's when Ulo and the mob moved in.
When a band or a management company run into trouble financially, that's when they come in, and they are heavies. And they'll promise you anything in the world and say that we'll give you whatever you need, we believe in you, blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, they have to have a percentage of the business. And I'm talking about loan sharking and all the way down the line.
By 1976, Ulo was boasting to his associates that he had taken over a hidden interest in the rock group Rare Earth by providing mob money and mob muscle to take care of Rare Earth's debts. But the mob's backing did little to help the group's music. Rare Earth's records didn't sell well, and the group that had once made millions was almost out of business. Peter Orlbeck, the group's drummer, says he was getting visits at home from strangers who wanted to know if he was hiding any of the group's money.
You see, we were 6 guys that were creating lots of money in which lots of people were enjoying. And we were a motor. And all of a sudden, the motor stopped running. And when the motor stopped running, it started affecting a lot of people. So you don't know what's going to happen.
Joe Ulo was arrested last year for the former basketball star Jack Molinas. And police say members of Rare Earth are lucky no one got hurt. It was a different story for the Three Dog Night, and police also are investigating Ulo's relationship with this rock group. The accountant for the group was shot in the arm and paralyzed in what police believe was a mob dispute over control of Three Dog Night. The group has since broken up, and police are still investigating the shooting. The members of Rare Earth say what happened to them could happen to any rock group trying to make it big in the rock music world.
Anybody that makes a lot of money, they're susceptible to being come on to by certain people if they run into money problems and if they're not smart enough to handle it all.
And that kind of thing can shut down a group.
Oh, instantly. Instantly. Because then the group, if a group becomes paranoid of their safety in any way, shape, or form, you can't go to write a song. I mean, you have to have total relaxation and feel good about yourself in order to write good material that people accept. I mean, it comes through in the music. You can see it, you can feel it, and you can sense it.
This example with Rare Earth is probably one of the most common hidden arrangements. Art is known for drawing in people with an interest in money laundering, and given how risky it is to invest in musicians, many narcotics traffickers use artists as a way to launder dirty money, and if the musician succeeds, that's an added bonus, which can be used to make even more money if they're able to go on tour. In Rare Earth's case, it was more notably an example of loan sharking, but there's honestly no shortage of examples I can give you from history. There are a lot of bands that were made off drug money. For example, the largest manufacturer of a substance that starts with L and ends in SD was the financier behind the band The Grateful Dead. Had it not been for him, they largely would have never succeeded. In the present day, many DJs are just fronts for selling narcotics. And you'll often see that rap groups are often fronts for illegal activity, but that's not to say that gangsterism is exclusive to rap in any capacity. Frank Sinatra, for example, was known to have been a mob-connected musician, one of the most successful, largely due to his mob ties. While never prosecuted because they could never build a case against him, he was known to have been close with many famous mobsters like Sam Giancana, the legendary mob boss of the Chicago outfit for a time.
Now, when that man said mob ties, I just thought about Jay Prince and them. That's crazy, bro, that they got that name. That's crazy.
Well as reputed mob boss Lucky Luciano, the first mob boss of what would later become the Genovese crime family. When Sinatra first started in the music business, he had rose to prominence singing in Tommy Dorsey's band. After his notoriety outlived the band's usefulness, Sinatra was snuck at his contract with Dorsey. The story allegedly goes that Sinatra's management offered $60,000 at first to get him out of that contract, but when Dorsey refused, Sinatra turned to his godfather, Willie Moretti, the New Jersey underboss of the Genovese crime family. Rumor has it he threatened him, and curiously, Dorsey let him out of that contract shortly after for $1. You see, Sinatra had to be watched closely by the powers that be. He had political influence, wealth, and close business dealings with very powerful people. This is why you'll notably see a lot of references to Sinatra in rap music.
Now, we know that the music industry handle business mafioso style. That's how you end up with Suge Knight and all of these labor owners that's connected to very, ruthless motherfuckers. This ain't that new to us, you know what I'm saying? So if very evil people have been controlling the music arts, it explains why the vibration of the music is so evil and gangster and mobbed out all the time. It ain't like angels control the music industry. The vibration of all our music, you gotta think, even our innocent artists end up crossing over, getting this alternate darker ego and shit. And we know that what this man is saying is true, and this shit is just crazy.
But this arrangement isn't just found in the American music industry either. In research pertaining to cartels in Mexico, music management is listed as a risk-tolerant method of money laundering. And on top of that, to quote this paper, it is unclear whether the music groups participated willingly or under duress in this scheme. In one version of events, groups were targeted by the organization that forced them to participate in addition to paying extortion quotas. However, an anonymous music industry expert revealed that some groups that had yet to become popular accepted organization money in exchange for producing records and writing songs that praised the organization. Once the music groups became popular, they could participate in the scheme because they could go on tour. In this sense, the organization would invest in lesser-known groups in the hopes that the songs would become popular and allow them to go on tour. This arrangement was unstable, according to the music industry expert, because once a group becomes famous and no longer needs the capital from an organization, it may seek to pursue an independent music career. However, if a group or any members of the group tried to sever ties with the DTL, they were often executed.
Our segment 3 this evening, part 2 in a series of 5 on crime in the rock music business, or how in some cities they might but don't advertise a rock concert brought to you under the auspices of a band of hoodlums. There is so much money in it, so many guitar players becoming millionaires in their 20s, gangsters have seen an opportunity and moved in, as reported now by Brian Ross.
This is Jerry Michelson, a rock concert promoter in Chicago.
By the way, you ready for
This is Arnie Granite, Michelson's partner.
Most of Manchester just canceled the whole tour.
As rock promoters, they expect problems. Last-minute cancellations, managers, agents, temperamental rock groups.
For the marquee tomorrow night, we cannot fit fabulous poodles across the marquee.
But what they never expected was trouble from the mob, and that they would have to turn down concerts because of the people involved. And in the summer of 1977, Michelson and Granite turned down an offer to be part of promoting 3 of the biggest rock concerts ever held in Chicago. This is Soldier Field, and the 3 big concerts held here were called the Super Bowl of Rock, with estimated ticket sales of well over $2 million, and the biggest names in rock music appearing. A federal grand jury is now investigating allegations that the mob ran these concerts, suspected of bribing city officials to get an exclusive on concerts in Soldier Field, booking rock groups through frontmen, and driving up the price of concert tickets, all part of a huge mob scheme to make big money in the rock concert business. One of the men under federal investigation is Victor Comforti, last photographed 20 years ago when he appeared before the McClellan Senate Rackets Committee. Comforti works out of this heating and air conditioning company on Chicago's west side. A number of rock concert promoters from around the country are believed to be close to Comforti, and federal investigators say this garage has become an important meeting place in the rock concert business. Terry Bruner of the Chicago Better Government Association investigated the concerts. He says Comforti was the godfather of the Soldier Field concerts.
He goes way back in the history of organized crime in Chicago. And I think that it's pretty clear that he was the person who was the go-between between the rock promoters and the city officials who were concerned. If you talk to enough people in the entertainment business or the rock business, they're going to tell you that this kind of thing goes on all over the country and that they know ahead of time. Like, we're not even going to bother with Chicago. There's too much hassle, as they say. And I think that's a code word for you've got to pay off. And I think that it's pretty clear that these people had to pay off in the city of Chicago.
One of the people who says he was a victim of the mob scheme at Soldier Field in Chicago is rock superstar Ted Nugent. Police estimates based on aerial photographs of the crowd at Soldier Field were that as many as 90,000 people were in the stands. But the promoters told Nugent there were only 56,000. And Nugent says he was cheated out of more than $100,000 in his percentage of the ticket sales.
You lost a lot of money there, didn't you?
Well, again, it's hard for me to walk away from a gig making $250,000 and realize that I lost money. But yes, did people pay to see Ted Nugent? Ted Nugent should get his money.
You consider yourself an honest businessman?
Oh, totally.
Do you, though?
Yes.
Does that hurt you in this industry?
I would say so. I would say that it's definitely hurt us being honest and operating in an honest way.
It is difficult. Over the years, there's been times when it's been difficult. We've had to make hard decisions like that.
Not to make a payoff, not to skim, not to cheat.
Yeah, those decisions have had to be made. There's been easy money out there at times. There was ours for the taking.
In this hall in Nebraska, it is still possible to put on a rock concert without the mob. But in Chicago, and in a number of cities in this country, promoters, managers, and rock stars have to go along with a lot to put on a rock concert.
Now, this type of criminal entanglement, just like many others going forward, you're going to notice a trend. There are examples of corruption from the very beginning, and there are also examples of circumstances in the modern day. For example, many nightclubs and many concert venues are just fronts to launder dirty money as well. There's no shortage of articles you can find nowadays about venues getting busted. But this goes far deeper than that, so let's start with Coachella. One of the largest, most famous, and one of the most profitable music festivals in the United States and the world. That was started by one of the biggest traffickers of the devil's lettuce in California, Gary Tovar. His promotion front was called Golden Voice Productions, and he would take losses on paper but launder his money through the promotion business, and the shows would give him a cover to also sell more product. Now, there's something very interesting that happens when a venue becomes a front for illegal money, assuming that the management doesn't skim from the artist, and there's some actual honest business going on. Relatively speaking, the bands actually get paid very well. To quote an article from OC Weekly, the singer of TSOL, Jack Grissom, explained, "When he started paying us more than anyone else in the country would pay us, I mean, it pissed people off. Gary really started paying these bands what they were worth. We'd play a show, and the show would be packed, and a band would get $100 or $200. Gary was the first punk promoter who actually paid what they deserved. Well, if we all got what we deserved, we'd all be in jail, but it was unlike any other promoter. Everyone wanted to be on Gary's shows, and it only was a short time before he was the biggest promoter around." Now, I can only speak for what is available online, and there's actually a lot of positive stuff said about this guy. Like, he helped a bunch of bands get started, we'd fly them out, he took a lot of losses, he was very generous as well. In fact, even when the feds busted him in 1991, a bunch of the groups that he had promoted early shows for would go on to thank him by doing a banquet to raise money for his legal fees. And he was known for promoting a bunch of bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction, Nirvana, and some of their earliest shows, all before they were widely known. Now, obviously, the business wasn't going as good while he was in prison, but in 1998, he was released, and a year later, they would go on to launch Coachella as this one big music festival. While Tovar was no longer the owner, he did join back as a consultant, as he had previously signed over ownership to his employees. Because Tovar was relatively generous with his front business, unlike many others in this industry, it inevitably led to Coachella becoming a success. Now, this one is a surprisingly positive one, given that the industry's history reads like a hall of rogues. But in reality, I had to restore your faith in humanity for a bit just to talk about this next character. Because when it comes to the shady business of music venues and nightclubs being used as fronts for illegal activity, this goes back to the emergence of organized crime in America.
Just picking up that W, man. I could have used this for the hunting.
In the 1920s, the outlawing of alcohol led to speakeasies where organized crime figures like Al Capone needed a constant supply of talent to keep the drinks and illicit gambling going. This created a need for someone to manage these performers and book them each night, as well as orchestrate them getting to the underground operations. This led to the creation of a company by the name of Music Corporation of America. The guy who founded it was named Julius Caesar Stein. He was already a doctor with a great income, but Prohibition had made it so that this job opportunity was more lucrative than his current one. Seemingly via the use of the Chicago outfit, they managed to extort, cheat, lie, and corrupt their way to the top, to the point that this talent agency had effectively retained a monopoly on all of Hollywood and show business. Their rise to power is straight out of the Mafia playbook. And I want you to think about this for a moment. A business with absolutely no barriers to entry, being a booking agent. Yet they'd consolidated power so much that they'd gained the nickname the Octopus because they had their reaches into everything in show business. And they had to be broken apart by antitrust. The full extent of the Mafia relations to MCA to this day is not known. Additionally, the circumstances that led it to becoming what we know now as Universal Music Group were highly questionable, with an active Mafia probe into the company going on in 1989, only for the investigation to get shut down by the highest ranks of government, with the prosecutor being completely defanged of his position for trying to pursue this case. Now, we will discuss this further, but for now, let's get back to the early days of Jules Stein. This man is essentially the father of what we know as the music business today.
You struggle to get the contract, and then the contract is sort of, you know, the indentured servitude type of thing. Our first contract was 7 albums, essentially 14 years. So I signed that contract when I was 23.
That's crazy.
Okay, so I'm signing, at 23 years old, I'm signing a contract that's supposed to take me into 37.
You're signing a contract for more than half your life.
And if you look at the shelf life of most artists, it's 4 to... So they're basically anticipating your entire arc.
That's so crazy.
So you don't have any leverage, you know, other than that they want to sign you. You sign the deal, and then it becomes this weird dance of like, can I sustain success?
Yeah.
If you get success and you have leverage, they'll get out of your way because you're making them a lot of money. But the minute you're not making them as much money, then they step in and they start playing these Jedi mind tricks on you. We know what to do, you know, the public's going to forget about you. I mean, I've heard all these things, like, you know, this kind of weird, like, yeah, you're in the room, but, you know, we're the arbiter of whether you can stay in the room.
That's the weird position that record companies had for a long time that they don't seem to have anymore.
I would argue against that because
they still do.
Well, they've moved to a different set of circumstances, and I'm not as conversant as I once was. But one thing they do with certain younger artists, but I think particularly more in the pop realm, is they do these 360 deals where it's like, if you get a perfume deal, if you like your whole world,
they own you.
We own a piece of your whole world. And fame is such a great quotient in American life now that you can see where kids would trade fame and be willing to give away like the profit part.
Well, they'll take a risk at the long-term ownership.
Right. So let me jump in there. So if you actually survive the cut, let's call it phase one. You're successful, you're a name, and now you're in a place to either renegotiate or your deal is up or whatever. I once had a conversation with a very powerful music executive, and I said, and I was friends with the guy, so I was like, give me the insider psychology here. Now that I know the game that you run, what do you tell people like me when they get here? And he says, oh, it's just, there's always a price. So they know that even if you get through the matrix of the whole thing and get out the other side, that there's just a dollar amount that will buy you back in.
Whoa.
They're not worried that you'll go independent. And in fact, if you look at a lot of the machinations of the music business over the last 20 years, especially with the rise of the internet, it's to keep people in the system.
Yeah.
They don't want true independence.
It goes without saying that once enough power is consolidated in any industry by limiting competition, the workers in that industry will flock there because that's where the majority of the opportunity is. Taking a look at history, a perfect storm of events enabled Julius Caesar Stein to have a near monopoly on managing talent in the music, film, and radio business. For one, prohibition made illegal business incredibly lucrative. The second of which was the Great Depression, which in turn has shifted bureaucratic focus onto other issues. Now, as you can imagine, having the backing of the Chicago outfit made limiting competition in Chicago incredibly easy. It goes without saying that if you did business with a rival gang, the outfit was likely to not be forgiving. Furthermore, clubs that refused exclusive deals with Stein were often targeted to be put out of business. In one particularly humorous example, he hired a mobster to launch a stink bomb during another set of another agency. But what further allowed Stein to expand his exclusivity network was the founding of the Commission within the American Mafia. Essentially, after a large amount of bloodshed and infighting for power within the Mafia, Lucky Luciano ultimately ended up on top of the underworld around 1931. Luciano was incredibly intelligent, and he knew that taking on the role of boss of all bosses would likely lead to a shorter career. So he instead attempted to solidify the power structure within the Mafia by creating a board of directors to mediate disputes within families. The commission consisted of 7 family bosses originally, and after Capone went to prison for tax evasion, Frank Nitti would replace that role for the Chicago outfit within months. This, in theory, should have given Jules Stein a new network of connections through this newly formed alliance, allowing him to extend his exclusivity far beyond Chicago. On top of all of that, as a result of Al Capone going to prison for tax evasion, this meant that the U.S. government was now willing to tax illegal income, and thus stressed a greater importance in working with front businesses. Jules Stein was at the right place at the right time. To quote the book Dark Victory, Ronald Reagan, MCA, and the Mob by the author Dan Moldea.
See, this is talking about MCA Records, which is a conglomeration of early labels that basically secretly got a monopoly on an industry. Is Music Corporation of America, MCA. Now, just to give you a heads up on how deep this is, check this out. Jam Master Jay, right, was with Profile Records. Jam Master Jay, who died, I believe his shit was a mob hit. Just for the fact that his label JMJ was up on the Profile Records. And when you look at Profile Records, look at who the parent companies is. Arista Records. Look at the next one, Sony. Sony is known for killing motherfuckers. Look at Michael Jackson was on Sony. This dude he talking about, look, Corin Robbins in 1980 was 23 at the time, had briefly worked for, look, MCA Records. Profile is affiliated with MCA Records, Sony, and all these labels that be knocking niggas off. That's all I'm saying. You hearing it in a documentary, and I'm showing you another rapper, Jam Master Jay, who from the same goddamn affiliation with same labels, and look at how his death was. Y'all keep thinking that this is just all coincidental. I can do this all day and show you that this is normal shit.
Which, on a side note, is a very good book. I highly recommend that you go read it. Whether you like or dislike Ronald Reagan politically, all I will say is that nobody gets to the top without doing a few favors. But getting back to his book, formerly represented by MCA, Jones, like Duke Ellington and Count Basie, had left the agency in 1939 after Willard Alexander, a top MCA agent, had defected to the William Morris Agency. Jones told Maury that MCA controlled most of the big-name bands in America and Canada, and at least 75% of the entire band booking business. How has MCA become so successful, Maury asked. Well, they've devised a system of rotating bands in all of the places they play, Jones replied. The system's so perfect that without the MCA contract, a band leader can't make enough bookings to make a living, and the clubs can't get enough bands unless they sign contracts with MCA. This system that Julius Caesar Stein created is the reason that bands go on tour to this day. Before this, they all had been playing at one location for months at a time.
On special segment tonight, the new payola, a sour note that is tainting the rock music business once again. It was back in the 1950s that payola became a way of life in this industry. Record companies and promoters paying off disc jockeys to plug new releases and to boost sales. Today, the practice appears to be back with a group of independent promoters playing a major role. And federal authorities are investigating a possible mafia connection. NBC's investigative reporter Brian Ross has additional details.
This block on First Avenue on the Lower East Side of New York is a stronghold of the Gambino Mafia family. According to the FBI and New York City Police, the Mafia capo who runs things on this block and in places far from this block is Joseph Armone, the man with the glasses, a convicted dealer who on most days can be found conducting mob business at a back table in this pastry shop. For months now, the activities of Armone and others have been watched closely by the FBI and police as far away as Los Angeles as part of an investigation of corrupt practices in the rock music business and what appears to be the reemergence of payola at rock music radio stations. This was the Waldorf Astoria last month, a black tie celebrity dinner to honor some of the early stars of rock and roll. And among the guests, two of the most powerful and feared men in the rock music business. Joseph Isbro, who authorities say has described Mafia capo Armone as his partner, and Isbro's close associate, Fred DeCipio, who rarely does business without his associate Mike by his side. DeCipio and Isbro, each with his own company, are top men in what is called the network. About 30 men, many at this dinner, all known as independent record promoters, who industry executives say are getting millions of dollars a year from record companies to make sure that certain new songs become hits on certain rock music radio stations.
South Florida's hit music station.
Don Cox of Miami, one of the top disc jockeys in the country, says some promoters will do almost anything to get their records played and earn their big fees from the record companies.
But do you know what's money to make on having a hit record in this country?
Cox, who's had a drug problem, says he's had to turn away promoters who have offered him cash, cane.
You take this ounce and going home, okay? Couple $1,000. Here, you go. Here, you go take. You know, we can get more. You take this, and I'll give you a call Tuesday. And what happens is they call you and go, how was that? By the way, I got this record I want you to hear. Now, if you take it, you got to answer the phone. But they cozy up and they corrupt.
Cox says at his station, the music staff picks which records to play based on the music. But disc jockeys and program directors elsewhere, who said they were afraid to go on camera, tell the same story Cox does about payoffs of cash, cars, expensive watches, drugs, and nights with women sent over by the promoters. Another side of the payola scandal, according to industry executives, is suspected fraud involving the weekly Top 40 hits charts, which determine more than anything what's played on the radio in this country.
What was number 14?
This chart, published by the trade newspaper Radio and Record, is based on calls from 250 leading rock radio stations, reporting what songs they're playing. Authoritative industry sources say independent promoters have been getting certain radio stations to make phony reports. Getting records not doing so well, not even getting played, getting those records on the Top 40 chart.
It's a serious thing.
Ken Barnes, the paper's editor, says about 20 radio stations were put on notice for making suspected phony reports, and 2 have been referred to federal authorities.
We're a trade paper. We can't be a cop. We can't really police what goes on at radio stations.
By industry estimates, DeCipio on the East Coast is sometimes paid as much as $150,000 by a record company for handling just one record. DeCipio would not talk to NBC News for this story. And on the West Coast, Isbro has become one of the wealthiest men in the music business, driving around in his Rolls Royce, always accompanied by at least one bodyguard. Isbro would not talk to NBC News for this story. Isbro, shown here with a record company executive, is well known in the music business, and so is his bodyguard. But of 10 record company presidents contacted by NBC News, including the heads of such major labels as CBS, Warner's, RCA, MCA, none would agree to talk on camera about Isbro or DeCipio or the network of independent promoters, some saying they feared repercussions. Off camera, one company president said, "You just can't be in business without them." A second company president said, "It's obvious what's going on." According to figures provided to NBC News by industry sources, record companies pay independent promoters, many with mafia connections, almost
right in the middle of a play.
a year, $80 million. And with this has come a climate of fear in the rock music business. Jay McDaniel says he was threatened by a big promoter when he tried to start a record promotion business, saying publicly he wasn't going to use payola.
Were there threats of violence against you?
Yes.
What was said to you? It basically came out that I could have my face rearranged.
Just how important the rock music business is to the mafia became clear last month at this New York City hotel. Joseph Ramon, the man.
Somebody said Quavo old QC. Yet it was allegedly the Migos reportedly was suing their former business partner for unpaid money. And I remember in October 1st there was an article about Quavo saying that without him there probably wouldn't even be a QC Music. And Migos QC lawsuit, this story here, all this led up to Takeoff death. And this is what nobody's talking about. Like, no one wants to talk about the dark side of the music industry and how all of these entities can be involved, but it's one big mob operation, and that this brother just so happened to be the sacrifice. And not to say Quavo had something to do with it or anybody had something to do with it. If all of us join the mob and we agree to these rules, when if I'm the man that got to be sacrificed, that's just the mob shit. In the mob, you die with a smile. You said, "Thank you, man, for the time I had to ball out." And the same way niggas will go do prison time and do their whole life for the mob, they'll die for the mob. And if you'll die for the mob, that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just showing you how the other side of the music industry work. That if it's really deep like what we're saying, because this is nothing that we can prove, we just thinking outside the box. Only thing I'm saying is, you sign up for it. Like, if I join a mob, I know where the mob kill its own sometime. And they might not necessarily tell you when or why they killed you, but that's just mob shit. And if it happened to me, that's what everyone join the mob know that. Like, everyone join the devil know that the devil is the prince of evil. Like, you joining an entity that he can kill you. What you expect is the devil. Like, but what I'm kind of like the same way. But I don't think every artist may know that. Maybe some artists are naive and they're shielded from that side of the industry. Like the dude we was reading about earlier in the documentary. He was about that white dude who died early on in the documentary. He was the most innocent one in the group, just like Takeoff. All the other group members was fucking, you know, they was more fucking gangster than him and shit. And just like, and that was an old white rock band. And they said a good die young. Why you think we say that? Even in that old white band, the most innocent member was sacrificed, had the highest insurance policy out by the label. And what did we read from that label exec? What did we read? It said that people who survive in the music industry, they got to be more gangster, more mafia-minded. In other words, if you're a naive ass dude who think the music industry just this fine and dandy place, you're gonna be shark food. You're gonna end up somebody's sacrifice. And if you look at these folks that's being sacrificed, they kind of got that good spirit. Michael Jackson, Takeoff. Not all of them now, because money talk, they don't care if you're good or bad, but it's just the fact that if you in a group, they normally gonna get the most purest one, because he the greenest one. Like, he don't know how deep it is, like, what? And he just innocent, you know, like that guy. That's a trend too we see in a lot of groups, that when the label go to making a choice, it'll always be the one that, you know, like that. But but that is crazy that all of this stuff led up to it though. All of this stuff, and this was talking industry exploitation. This was 2 years ago, where they was talking about exploitation and shit up on this article. So I mean, I'm just saying, let's play the video though.
Man from the pastry shop arranged an unusual meeting with the top 3 men in the Gambino Mafia family, including the Gambino family boss, John Gotti. In the view of the FBI, a mob summit meeting. Also observed here, Joseph Isgro, who authorities say meets frequently with Armone and other gangsters. And Fred DeCipio, who according to his lawyer, has never met Gotti, has met Armone only twice, and has no business relationship with mobsters. 1 hour after meeting top people in the American Mafia, Isgro and DeCipio were at the Waldorf, taking their places among the top people in the American music business. Brian Ross, NBC News, New York.
Now, there are oftentimes a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to payola. You can pay to have a radio station play your song, but you just have to disclose that they were paid to do it. Now, obviously, in the music business, everyone likes to act like they have 100% organic come-up, like all their success just came out of nowhere. But in reality, if you know how this business works, you know that it's a bunch of people fighting over the exact same listeners. If we are to believe what industry insiders have been saying, payola never went away, and given the fact that 2,500 text messages leaked to Rolling Stone in 2020 seem to show that radio station promoters were actively stuffing playlists with the same songs, going as far as to play the same thing on repeat every 15 minutes to reach chart goals. And then the text later showed that once a song hit a chart position goal, they would swap it out for another song. Not surprising if you ask me. Dare I say it, but it's almost like the charts aren't an accurate reflection of what people are choosing to listen to. It almost seems like a closed system of power where only certain people are allowed to cheat. Notice how when an Indian rapper buys views to break the world record on YouTube, he gets stripped of his title and they change the rules, but when Taylor Swift does it, it's completely okay. Notice how when Jay-Z tries to create an artist-owned platform to challenge Spotify, when he fakes a world record, his company gets investigated for data fraud. But when record companies partnered with YouTube launched Vivo in 2009, Vivo magically becomes the #1 most viewed channel on YouTube, with Lady Gaga's Just Dance magically getting 90 million views in 24 hours at a time when most of the world didn't even have smartphones. Actually, if you're paying attention to this chart here, supposedly this video was uploaded in June. Notice that it gets 0 views that entire time, and then the day before Vivo launches, it gets 90 million views in a day. Vivo hadn't even gone live yet. The same pattern of behavior can be found in a number of different videos. And I just want to point out that if this video's views were real, this means that it would have literally been a world record all the way until 2020.
You know, just when there's little contests, and this is #1, and this one wins this, and this is the band of the year, the album of the year, like, says who, and why is it a contest?
So check this out. Do you mind if I explain it? Please do. Okay. The conversation came up with about the actual album, like, Warner Brothers was interested if we wanted to bundle it, which is when you include the record, like, with a ticket, right? And a lot of people have been doing it, whether you buy a t-shirt and you get a record, and it's a digital download link. And I was like, well, how does that work? And I'm like, well, you would give $5 from each ticket back to Warner Brothers, and then you would get a record sale. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me and to Dan. And they're like, yeah, well, it's the only way you're gonna get a #1 record. So if you want.
Are y'all hearing this shit? So it's a system in the music industry where these artists can buy record sales like how some YouTubers purchase views. Some people be buying views on their channel and it'll have like 50 likes, but the video will have like 500,000 views on it with like 100 likes. Yeah, they paid for them views and they forgot to pay for the likes because you got to buy each one separately. But YouTube will take a lot of that down. That's why that's a risky game, because YouTube got its own paid services for you to pay for promotion, and it's organic. They just put your video at the top and it drive natural organic traffic. In the music industry, they saying when they say an artist sold so many records, they didn't sell it. That the system of the Billboard chart is rigged. The artists that's selling all these records really just paid these companies that control. Like, all this shit fake, man. Listen what this dude's saying.
Why is it a contest?
So check this out. Do you mind if I explain it? Please do. Okay. The conversation came up with about the actual album, like, Warner Brothers was interested if we wanted to bundle it, which is when you include the record, like, with a ticket, right? And a lot of people have been doing it, whether you buy a t-shirt and you get a record, and it's a digital download link. And I was like, well, how does that work? And I'm like, well, you would give $5 from each ticket back to Warner Brothers, and then you would get a record sale. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me and to Dan. And they're like, yeah, well, it's the only way you're gonna get a #1 record. So if you want a #1 record, you got to do that. And I was like, well, it's 1-to-1. Like, we get $5 back, and then we get a royalty, and we get a ticket sale. And like, no, you don't get a royalty, and you only get an album sale count if they click the link, and we have a 50% click through. So in other words, we would pay $10 per sale on Nielsen SoundScan by giving the money back that we've sold on tickets to.
Paying for record sales. Because, you know, man, is I'm hearing this right? Is that what he's saying? This is crazy.
In other words, we would pay $10 per sale on Nielsen SoundScan by giving the money back that we've sold on tickets to Warner Brothers, to our record label. I was like, that at this point,
that is a crazy deal.
Check it out. We've sold 250,000 tickets on this tour, so we would get back 1.25 million. Our record advance for this record was less than that. I was like, if Dan and I were just on our own record label, we could give ourselves $5 per ticket and count, and we just take the money from the right hand to the left hand, give you a link. If you counted it, we get the sale, we keep the money. That's basically what was going on.
Are you fucking shitting me? Damn, that was crazy right there, man. Drop a bomb for that dude.
What never ceases to amaze me is how people can take an incredibly subjective medium like art and then state that the one that did the most in sales of all things is the objective best. As if sales numbers are anything but a vanity metric. That's not profit. Like, we know for a fact that money laundering takes place in this industry, just like every artistic medium. This is like saying that the best piece of digital art in human existence is this one NFT, because one dude bought it from himself. And my point in bringing this up is that there's a story behind this. But to understand how we got to this point today, you need to understand that the Billboard charts used to be based off of jukebox play data, as well as data collected from record store owners. But can you guess who had a huge hand in jukeboxes? They were all cash payments. They could be placed on every corner. An ideal vehicle at the time to launder money. Now, out of the 4 big manufacturing companies for jukeboxes in America, Rockola was founded by businessman David Cullen Rockola, a mob-connected businessman who was later charged with corruption in 1929. AMI was run by Jacob Guzik's son-in-law, Frank Garnett. That was until 1949 when it was taken over by the other infamous mobster, Sam Giancana. Many jukebox manufacturers didn't sell to bars and clubs directly. They were sold instead to regional distribution entities, and these distribution entities would sell to operators of jukebox routes. These operators would collect the cash, they would supply the records for the machines, and they would be responsible for the repairs and needed maintenance. The mafia focused its attention at the distribution level. This gave them control over the machines where the cash was picked up, and it also gave them control over what records went inside the jukeboxes. As the 1950s would pass, various mobsters built their empires on jukeboxes, with the Chicago outfit controlling 100,000 of the nation's 575,000 jukeboxes. As a result, this would lead to a situation sort of reminiscent to what we know today as an industry plant. If you recall, the charts were originally based on jukebox data. This now meant that all they had to do was put a new artist's records inside their machines, then simply misreport the amount of plays in the machines to instantly send a new artist to the top of the charts for...
Yo, this show you how far back the lobbying. Every artist you think was that hot, how do you know they that hot? Listen to how far back. Man, our whole world is fake, phony, and a lie, man. Bro, even back in the day, the top artists ain't the best that the people had to offer. This game always been about our man gonna be at the top because we got the muscle. That's why, man, bro, it's like the all other artists that's been ruling this music industry have just been property of the mob. It ain't been like we just been looking for true talent in the community, because the true talent get overlooked. And that's why the vibration of all the music is on some mob demon time shit, cutthroat shit. You can feel that in the music, and that's what the lyrics are, the value system of it, because the mob own it. And the mob don't produce saints. These motherfuckers been doing this ever since the jukebox. Look at that.
As the 1950s would pass, various mobsters built their empires on jukeboxes, with the Chicago outfit controlling 100,000 of the nation's 575,000 jukeboxes. As a result, this would lead to a situation sort of reminiscent to what we know today as an industry plant. If you recall, the charts were originally based on jukebox data. This now meant that all they had to do was put a new artist's records inside their machines, then simply misreport the amount of plays in the machines to instantly send a new artist to the top of the charts for as long as they wanted. Coincidentally, or perhaps a part of a grander conspiracy, during the 1950s, all of the radio stations across the nation began focusing their programming to the best music, the hits, with most major radio stations adopting the top 40 format. As author Gus Russo stated in his book, The Super Mob, it was Stein who encouraged fellow Lawndale entrepreneur William Bailey to boost his new network, the Columbia Broadcasting System, by putting Stein's music acts on air live and turning the rigged top 40 into a national phenomenon.
If you don't understand how this affect the way we listen to music today, let me give you this and I'm gonna hit play. There was a time in the world during the early baby music industry when it was more controlled by like the people. I'm talking about way back in the day with vinyl records, right? During these days, it was, you cut your radio on and it was you could pick up on so many different artists and broadcasting channels that the possibility of how many artists was out during this time was so amazing. When the mob started infiltrating the radio industry and all that, slowly but surely we start going into a time where you only hear a very few amount of artists, but you hear them all day. You get like this handful of group of artists on the radio and they just run them all day. It wasn't always like that. It was where it was a large range of artists where you damn near didn't hear that one song twice in a day, because they had so many people to play in those old juke joints and like I'm talking about way back in the day with the vinyls and shit. It was so many artists and everybody was, the airwaves was more broad and they hadn't been monopolized yet. He's showing you now how they created like the top 40, the top type the way of thinking. That's the mob way of making sure, because if they can control the media that's letting you know who the top, that's who we gonna keep spinning. That's who we gonna keep. So they got us into this the top this. It wasn't always like that. It was just, hey, play the music. Just play all the artists, just play everybody music. If you got something we ain't heard, we definitely want to hear that. Bring it here. It ain't like that today. You got to strong arm and pay your way into these charts to get into rotation and all that, man. It's mafioso. And because of that, it's very repetitive. It's a programming.
Now, on a bit of a side note, regarding the statement from Russo, I'm not entirely sure where he got this bit of info. Other books I've found seem to suggest the same thing, but other sources I've found list Todd Storrs, a radio DJ from Nebraska, as the originator. Just thought I should clarify that. Continuing on. Now, despite jukeboxes falling out of favor, that didn't mean the mob couldn't still manipulate the charts. All it really took back in the day was paying off a record store owner. To quote the New York Times, until 1991, the pop music charts were notoriously unreliable. Paying off record store employees with free albums, concert tickets, and even vacations and washing machines was the standard music business method of manipulating record sales figures. Even the Billboard magazine charts, considered the most prestigious in the business, were compiled from store managers' oral reports, which were inaccurate to begin with and easily swayed. As a result, this led to the introduction of the SoundScan system in 1991, which would only tally record store sales after a store clerk scanned the barcode at checkout for an album. And after that, the music industry cleaned up its act and nobody ever cheated again. Just kidding. Perhaps the funniest part about the SoundScan system was that data reported often had large discrepancies from the platinum certifications companies claimed. For instance, Michael Jackson's album History, when it was first released, it had been claimed 5 times platinum. But since each album included 2 CDs, each unit counted for 2. Yet despite this, SoundScan only reported 1.3 million sold. These certifications were based on the amount of CDs that were shipped, not actually sold in stores, meaning that a record company could just ship a bunch of boxes to a store and that would count as a platinum record. And then after a period of time, the retailer could just return the boxes for credit.
Oh my God! Did you hear that shit? We gotta run that shit back, man. That show you our whole life is a lie. Everything we think about, everything, we gotta re-question it, man. Check this out.
These certifications were based on the amount of CDs that were shipped, not actually sold in stores, meaning that a record company could just ship a bunch of boxes to a store and that would count as a platinum record. And then after a period of time, the retailer could just return the boxes for credit. This meant they could make it however many times platinum they wanted. As one article from the New York Daily News put it, the inflation of history is far from an isolated case. Often when an album by a major artist begins to slip down the charts, companies slap a gold or platinum symbol as a cover. In just the last few weeks, Warner Brothers had the Rod Stewart album, Spanner in the Works, certified gold as it plunged near the bottom of the top 200. In fact, the album has only sold 211,000 copies so far, according to SoundScan. Likewise, Columbia recently planted a platinum sticker on the Soul Asylum record, which has sold 574,000 to date. While Polygram stuck a 1 million unit insignia on Bon Jovi's These Days, even though the album only sold 357,000 units to date. Such discrepancies put Billboard in an odd position. As a trade publication, the magazine is obliged to print RIAA certifications, which often clashes with the far more accurate SoundScan data. As a result, Ellis says, it's time for the industry to think about the value of those RIAA shipment figures. Now look, I could dedicate an entire episode to explaining how artists game the charts, but for the sake of not getting too off track with this video, I want to just go over a few for now. For instance, after SoundScan's introduction, record labels began holding back singles, then juicing the charts by building up radio play first. Additionally, there's stories of sweetheart deals being arranged with retailers, where they would send a bunch of discounted copies to their store, only for someone to come in that day and then just clear them all off the shelf. And then there's stories of people being paid off to run the same thing through the scanner over and over again. And there's other stories of barcodes being switched around, so then they could just redirect the sales from another popular track all into one. And lastly, the main method of gaming SoundScan back in the day was to send a bunch of copies to independent retailers. Here, each copy would be worth 3 on the charts. The idea here was to give a bunch of extra weight to independent retailers at the time because the SoundScan system hadn't rolled out across every single store yet. Then found in the documents of the Elliott Spitzer payroll investigation, the documents accused Sony of keeping people on payroll to basically call in to the radio stations and make fake song requests. Then also found in these documents alleged that radio stations have participated in selling spin packages. This one's really interesting. I always wondered why radio stations sometimes just play like a whole bunch of songs in quick succession during commercial break, but they'll only play like snippets and then they'll say like, you're listening to Pay 0104 or something. Now, I don't know if this is still true today, but it turns out the reason they were doing this is because airplay monitoring companies detect that the song is being played on the radio, even if it's just for a short time, and then they count that towards the charts. While you may have heard that people lie and numbers don't, just know that sometimes we don't get the full story behind those numbers. Now, before we get to this next entanglement, I need to tie up the stories with Bob Keane and Larry Nunes. Then we'll also get back to the death clause. Bob had claimed he'd partnered with Nunes in 1964 when he needed money, and he wrote in his autobiography, I had wondered if I had made a deal with the devil. I had heard that Larry had a reputation for being associated with the mob, and as it turned out 3 years later, a relationship ended in deception, dishonesty, and murder. I consider myself to be very lucky to have come out of that relationship with Nunes in one piece, virtually unscathed. After Fuller's passing in 1967, Delphi had been dissolved and Bob Keane had moved on. But it's worth noting just how bad Keane had gotten burned within his relationship with not just Nunes, but also his previous financier. Before Delphi existed, there was a company called Keane Records, spelled K-E-E-N. The story behind this goes, Bob Keane was playing clarinet in several bars and clubs around Los Angeles, and one evening he met businessman John Simus, who persuaded Bob to set up a record label with him. Under this position, Keane would go on to manage Sam Cooke for 3 years, who, I should add, he also passed away under disputed circumstances as well. But soon after working with Keane, Sam Cooke came out with a record that included Summertime, and on the other side it had You Send Me. You Send Me ended up reaching the #1 on the charts after it took off in 1957. At this point, despite Keane Records having earned over $1 million from sales from You Send Me, Bob apparently only had an oral contract with Simus. Eventually, Keane was cut out of the picture, and he was duped and received nothing, and was left out in the dust. Hereafter, Keane would go on to found Delphi. Keane basically had an open-door policy for musicians to audition for him. One of the more known was Richie Valens, who after seeing short-lived success, passed away along with Buddy Holly and J.P. Richardson, and pilot Roger Peterson for reasons unknown in a plane crash after failing a takeoff. Now that being said, just because the reasons were undetermined, it's worth mentioning that the weather conditions were incredibly poor, and the pilot wasn't even made aware of the weather that they were flying into. On top of that, the pilot was 21 years old, was not instrument rated, and should not have been flying in a snowstorm. Now, as a result, Keane ended up owning Valens' legacy via his masters, and over the course of the next half-decade with Nunes, he built up a pretty sizable catalog, including...
Are y'all hearing this? They sent that man up with a pilot. Now, why would a label do that to their artist? Now, if your artist is more valuable to you alive than dead, you would have checked all that. You would have said, hey man, that pilot ain't even certified and can't fly. And we checked the weather, it's a snowstorm. Come on, man. Like, we ain't sending our artists into that. The label ain't making that many mistakes. If you value the life of a person, and you know, this, did y'all hear this shit? This was clearly put. If you think all this is a coincidence and I'm crazy, man, hey, I'll just be crazy with it. The man died and they ended up taking all of his music and masters and all that or whatever.
Including Chan Romero, Little Caesar and the Romans, Ron Holden, Johnny Crawford, Brenda Holloway, some of the first records from Frank Zappa, and the Surfaris. But that being said, Bob Keane basically had his entire catalog stolen out from under him. As he wrote in his autobiography, I was trying to resolve the dissolution of Stereophi, and towards the end of 1970, I finally got an agreement with Larry Nunes as to who was going to get what from the company assets. I was to receive all master recordings, including my Delphi tapes, and he got 600 copyrights in the publishing division. I signed the papers and went over to the local storage facility to pick up my property. There was nothing there. Missing, presumed stolen. I don't know who got the recording equipment, but it seems that the now defunct MGM Records was figured in the deal somewhere. MCA was even selling bootleg Richie Valens albums. The Keane story seems to be corroborated by the fact that several 45s turned up in 1973 from MGM Records. However, afterwards, Keane moved on from the music business after losing basically his entire career. Now, with Keane's story out of the way, let's discuss Mr. Larry Nunes. He was what's known as a rack jobber. That would be a person who maintains a distribution network of retail space at various mom-and-pop shops. The purpose of this kind of distributor would be to sell cutouts and overstocks for record companies, usually titles that didn't sell well or that they had overstock of that could be sold off for pennies on the dollar. While this might seem like honest work, this job was also a front for other illegal activity. For one, cutout deals allowed record labels to bypass the artist and not pay them any royalties. And the second use case for illegal activity would be to sell counterfeit records as well, under the cover of a cutout. As the LA Times once reported, critics of these sell-off practices have been complaining for years that record companies use the cutout and overstock designations arbitrarily to raise quick cash at the expense of the artists. They say that cutouts and overstocks often are routinely sold, bartered, or given away by the record companies to cutout distributors, favorite retail accounts, and even company employees. In most cases, the artist receives no royalties. What's more, the Recording Industry Association of America, a trade group of the major record companies, contends that mass sell-offs create an atmosphere conducive to counterfeiting by providing illegal duplicators with a cover to produce large quantities of the recordings that have been sold by manufacturers as cutouts and overstocks. But in the case of Larry Nunes, what you need to know is that he was a cutout distributor who worked with two companies. One was MCA, and the other one was Roulette Records. If you recall that mysterious phone call in the middle of the night, where the road manager claimed that Bobby was going to see a girl named Melody, Larry Nunes employed Melody, and by all accounts, Melody was a lady of the night.
My relationship with Bobby primarily was to watch him and talk to him. I was like the go-between to talk to Bobby and see what was on his mind, what bothered him and stuff like that.
While Melody later claimed that Nunes was not mobbed up, it's also worth pointing out that Larry Nunes had signed an exclusive distribution deal with Roulette Records. That distribution deal was for the Bobby Fuller 4's last single, The Magic Touch. So following the money here, it takes us back to Roulette Records, owned by a man by the name of Morris Levy.
In a series of reports on this program, NBC investigative reporter Brian Ross has detailed several links between the mob and the songs that make the charts. And tonight, Ross has more.
This is the man federal authorities describe as the godfather of the American music business, Morris Levy, in the custody of FBI agents after his arrest just after 7 this morning at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Boston. Levy, the president of Roulette Records, is little known outside the music business, but federal authorities say Levy is as powerful as any big record company president, using his ties with organized crime to control record companies, record stores, and big-name performers. Also arrested along with Levy this morning were 21 others in Florida, New York, and New Jersey, indicted by a federal grand jury in Newark on racketeering and extortion charges, accused of using violence to get their way in the gambling business, the narcotics business, and the music business. United States Attorney Thomas Grealish.
A Mac 11 machine gun with a silencer is not used for target shooting.
The New Jersey mob investigation began more than 3 years ago with a man identified by federal and state authorities as a mafia boss, Gaetano Bastola, known on the streets of New Jersey and in the recording studios of Hollywood as Corky. By following Bastola and tapping his phone, federal agents were led to Morris Levy, to New York talent agencies, and finally to Hollywood, to the corporate headquarters of the huge entertainment conglomerate MCA, and what authorities describe as some suspicious business deals at MCA Records. The president of MCA Records, Irving Azoff, said earlier this year that his company was the victim of the mob and that MCA had done nothing wrong. But somehow, according to federal authorities, millions of MCA records by Neil Diamond, Elton John, and the rock group The Who and others ended up in the hands of Mob Front Record Company, which were going to sell the records at huge profits to record stores.
The mob showed up. The enforcers came down.
Dennis Eisman is the lawyer for a man who ran one of the Mob Front companies and is now a protected federal witness in the case. Eisman says his client was beaten up by the mob when he refused to pay for a large shipment of MCA records.
I think it was to show him if he didn't pay, he was going to get hurt, maybe hurt worse. I'm not sure if they intended to break his jaw and fracture some bones in his face. I think it was just to show him that he couldn't not pay.
And there has been other violence in the case. Earlier this year, a New York City policeman was while following one of the men involved in the MCA deal, who is expected to be indicted soon by another grand jury. This indictment is the work of one of 5 grand juries now investigating organized crime in the music business. Federal sources say a grand jury in Los Angeles is investigating the role of top MCA executives in all this. Other grand juries in Los Angeles, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and New York are investigating allegations of payola, the use of cash, cocaine, prostitutes, and some mob-controlled promoters to get songs played on the radio. Law enforcement authorities say what's at stake in all these investigations is the mob stronghold in a business that earns $4 billion a year. Brian Ross, NBC News, Newark, New Jersey.
It goes without saying that the circumstances surrounding Bobby Fuller's passing are very questionable. But it's worth pointing out that had things gone a bit differently with Bobby Fuller's mother not keeping an eye out that entire day, then it would be much harder to argue the mysterious circumstances surrounding his death. This entire situation, given the facts available, reeks of a botched, contrived accident.
Bobby's own mother said someone had beaten him, so...
I think some people think that the whole Jeffrey Epstein suicided thing is just some one-off meme. But I should let you know that this is a very real tactic used by organizations like the CIA to take out targets under secretive conditions. They quite literally wrote the book on this. For secret hits, either simple or chase, the contrived accident is the most effective technique. When successfully executed, it causes little excitement and is only casually investigated. On that note, when you understand the full potential of something like a contrived accident, it's very difficult not to be a conspiracy theorist in the music industry, especially given the fact that historically this industry has had ties to organized crime since the very beginning.
Big motherfucking facts. Anybody talking about ban all this conspiracy stuff? Well, you don't know that the mob been running the music industry. Fool. You can't have a conspiracy once we admit that it's secretly ran by the mob. That's conspiracy.
And as long as humans are corrupt, I would say that those people will continue to rise to the top in those businesses, whether it be the same set of powers that be or another.
I had to say that because you'll have some folks saying, man, chill with the conspiracy theories. But they will agree that, oh yeah, the mob run the industry. Guess what, dude? You're conspiracy theories now, bro.
Stupid.
When a contrived accident is orchestrated correctly, it can be difficult for the general public to understand what they're looking at as a hit. Oftentimes, people won't think twice to question someone who is labeled a junkie or depressed. But you should know that
See that? People won't question nobody that's labeled a junkie or depressed. Now, don't that fit Pimp C, Juice WRLD? See, if you're a rapper and you sipping all this lean and you over abusing drugs and rapping about that, the label will use that as a way to knock you off. And people will be like, yeah, man, you know he was always sipping that shit all the time. Nobody will question it. See, it is so easy for a label to stage a little nigga's death, man. Because if you rapping about beef and all that, a label can make beef around you. You don't even know your label the one sent them ops to you. And they got to get you knocked off. You're worth more dead than alive. Homicides disguised as staged as suicide. And the local authorities, the city, the county, the coroner, all of them working with the mob, with the label. This is a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure and system. This is crazy. Because all of these rappers died like Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix. We say, just another damn artist doing all them drugs. And goddamn it, they died again. And that make it so easy for the label to knock these niggas off. Like, it's crazy, man.
Staging of these particular incidents is definitely a real thing that goes on. But don't take my word for it, the CIA will tell you themselves. An overdose of administered as a sedative will cause death without disturbance and is difficult to detect. The size of the dose will depend upon whether the subject has been using regularly. If not, 2 grains will suffice.
Man, I love your show. I like what you're doing. Great. Right? That's why I came here. Fresh out of jail, I come check you out, right?
Right.
Why the bulletproof vest?
Oh, well, it's not. Oh, no, that's just. It's your style. You've been in the can for a while. That's what all the talk show hosts are wearing.
This is a new thing, right?
Yeah.
See, if somebody gonna do something about it, see, technology is so high, right?
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. Some kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there. People say them all the time. They got this stuff to call, they get blood from somebody with AIDS, and then they shoot you with it.
Oh, so that's not bad.
That's a slow death.
Yeah.
Easy thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Y'all telling me that man ain't have something to do with that? Now, how would they let him joke like that? And notice how the energy kind of got eerie. I don't care what nobody say. Eazy-E was another sacrifice. And Suge might have just showed y'all as how it happened and he was talking too much. Look at how the energy got after he said that shit.
It's not. Oh, no, that's just. It's.
My word for it, the CIA will tell you themselves. An overdose of administered as a sedative will cause death without disturbance and is difficult to detect. The size of the dose will depend upon whether the subject has been using regularly. If not, 2 grains will suffice.
Man, I love your show. I like what you're doing. Great. Right? That's why I came here. Fresh out of jail, I come check you out, right?
Right.
Why the bulletproof vest?
Oh, well, it's not. Oh, no, that's just. It's your style. You've been in the can for a while. That's what all the talk show hosts are wearing.
This is a new thing, right?
Yeah.
See, if somebody gonna do something about it, see, technology is so high, right?
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. Some kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there. People say them all the time. They got this stuff to call, they get blood from somebody with AIDS, and they shoot you with it.
Oh, so that seems bad.
That's
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
Easy thing, you know what I mean?
Now they're gonna let him teach children how to kill somebody on TV. Looking back at this will show you how evil and satanic the game is. And he's sitting up there with a cigar with his leg kicked up. And y'all talk about the day they just started dissing the dead. This man was dissing the dead on Jimmy Kimmel. And he teaching the children. So if you children want to learn how to kill somebody without the gun, he literally said that, and they laughing at it. But notice how the energy get out that he brought up Eazy-E with it. They was like, bro, you doing too much. Like,
using regularly. If not, 2 grains will suffice.
Man, I love your show. I like what you're doing. Great. Right? That's why I came here. Fresh out of jail, I'll come check you out, right?
Right.
Why the bulletproof vest?
Oh, it's not. Oh no, that's just it's your style. You've been in the can for a while. That's what all the talk show hosts are wearing.
This is a new thing, right?
Yeah.
See, if somebody gonna do something about it, see, technology is so high, right?
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. Some kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out that people say them all the time. They got this stuff they get blood from somebody with AIDS.
Yeah.
And they shoot you with it.
Oh, so that seems bad.
That's
Yeah.
slow death.
Yeah.
Easy thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh no. Okay.
you notice how everybody was like, oh no, hold up, man, white bro, don't do that. Like, you notice how the energy got, man, yo. All right, TV, yo, let's go.
Now, as you can imagine, Suge Knight's statement here obviously put him at the center of a conspiracy surrounding Eazy-E. While some people question the possibility of such a plot, others have pointed out that the rate at which Eazy-E went from being diagnosed to passing away was incredibly quickly.
Right. It wasn't AIDS that killed Eazy-E. It was some kind of other injection, if you ask me. Because a nigga don't just get diagnosed with AIDS and be dead that quick. That's facts.
Now, while various people have shared their opinions throughout the years regarding that conspiracy, what's incredibly interesting about Suge Knight's statement is that it shows a familiarity with the contrived accident. So with you getting a broader context on the music industry as well as some of its history, it should now be brutally apparent to you how little it has to do with music at all, and how much it actually has to do with crime. Within the next installment of this series, we're going to be diving in further into the contrived accident and various other conspiracies that come from the music industry. Before we go, I want to ask you, the audience, a question. What contributes to the data that we saw at the start of this episode? Is it really just substance and mental illness that contributes to having your life shortened by up to 25 years? It's not like musicians are unique in this problem at all. Substance and mental illness are prevalent in all walks of life, whether you're famous, poor, whatever. Clearly this data shows us that something is seriously wrong with this industry. And before we end this episode, I want to leave you with a clip from NPR, discussing Mexico's music industry. I want you to pay attention to how different the discussion is over in Mexico.
From the year before, so my question is, are these musicians falling into what's a bigger pattern, or do you think there's something unique about the deaths of these musicians which may be attached to these cartels?
The same reason that other people are being killed in Mexico. There are entanglements. And
personal entanglements?
Sure, a lot of personal entanglements. Narcotraficantes are often funding bands, according to anybody in the music industry who you talk to. In other words, actually giving the seed money for a band to get started, to get publicity, to get a record cut. And in return for that, are frequently then expecting a cut of the money. Well, money, when it's changing hands, often can lead to misunderstandings and out-and-out deceptions. And the way that drug cartels deal with those sorts of problems is not by filing lawsuits, it's by killing people. Then there's also romantic entanglements. The closer a band is with that world, the more likely that a band member might, say, catch the eye of a powerful drug lord's girlfriend or wife or daughter. And all of these sorts of entanglements can create, very big problems.
Now, it goes without saying that the cartel presence in Mexico is far more pronounced. But it's honestly foolish to think that organized crime doesn't exist in every single society, and it's not something that really ever goes away. They say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. It's barely sociable. Have a good night.
Very, very great work from Barely Sociable channel. The link is pinned to the top, and I want to, with everything we just watched in that, think about this. The Migos was breaking up. They had reached their peak, all right, and they weren't gonna profit the mob anymore going on this way. And the mob like to consolidate and keep their cash cow in the green. So what I'm saying is, if we go with this theory, Takeoff is a sacrifice, and we're gonna see Offset and Quavo get back together, and they're gonna be bigger than the Migos ever was with Takeoff alive. Cause when they come, when the whole thing about Offset getting back with Quavo, that unity gonna be big, and then it's unifying surrounding his death. And if they start doing shows or come out with an album and do the show with like Takeoff's hologram, and you have Quavo and Offset, and then you have Takeoff's hologram, and those will be big, man. So, and the label will get them back in the green. This is how you, and then it'll automatically keep them stamped as this legendary group, because unfortunately, death is death, and this whole concept of death, right, is how to make a person iconic. So that, just think about all this, man. Like, it's really death culture. It ain't a music industry, it's a death industry at this point, because the labels are capitalizing more off of death than music. And to prove what I'm saying, this'll also explain why the music sucks, but the death rate's going up. Now think about what's happened to the music industry. Back in the day, artists stayed alive a little bit longer, and the music was more quality. To every generation, the music is getting more and more watered down, and the killing going up, because of the labels realizing, fuck the music, we can make more money off the death culture. And so if you look at what's happening in the music industry, death is selling more than music. You don't gotta know how to rap good. If you killed somebody and you can have a hit surrounding their death and pack a coded language to say how you killed them or something, that's what's selling the death culture, the whole death energy, and on all levels. Everybody capitalizing off the death energy of another soul, and this is the whole. It's a crazy game. But yeah, it ain't about music no more. It's about death. And with that being said, let's move to some more stuff that we gotta look at, because hold up. See, because I heard that Quavo and Jay Prince unfollow each other or some shit like that. Nah, they said, I heard that Jay Prince and Drake is unfollowing Quavo. Did y'all hear that? Now, I don't know how true this is, because I'm still trying to get some official receipts on it. But I didn't hear about Drake. But they said that after the murder, Jay Prince unfollowed Quavo. So that's a rumor spreading around. I'm not gonna say it's a fact because I ain't really researched that, but I'm just letting you know if that's true, that's fucking crazy. Right there. And also they said that the Killer Cam dude that killed Takeoff, it's a rumor that he's been killed, but ain't nobody saw about it, and they may be hiding the man. And I think that cause this shit only gonna get uglier and uglier. If you thinking that this situation finna die down, you a fool. At this point, somebody now got to be the scapegoat and be the scapegoat justice cow. The people want justice, and now what the mob got to do is give them a Barabbas. They got to give them somebody to put on the cross. So all I'm saying is the police is knocking all these labels off, like Young Thug and them. RICO charges is coming out the ass nowadays. And I'm saying it's not off the table that if shit hit the fan and this lead back to Rap-A-Lot, Mob Ties, Jay Prince and them, that you might be looking at some more RICO type situation. This might be the next big RICO shit. Because if they can open up the can of worms to show how this death will link back to Jay Prince and them, and Jay Prince Jr., they're going to open up and start saying, well, how many other times they did this? Because that's how the feds do when they open up the RICO shit. They want to have more than one. They're gonna be pulling all kind of shit, getting computers and all kind of shit. And once they start collecting computers and getting data and going in niggas' house, getting hard drives and shit, is so much shit gonna come up out the goddamn up out the magician's hat then. And that's why them RICO cases be so interesting, cause you think you knew it all, and then they be go to reading text message and showing how this one set that one up and that was set, bro. This shit and really it ain't getting better. It's just gonna be a rabbit hole of I'm telling you how this how the industry is, man. This how the industry is. That's why if you're a musician, you got all the technology at your disposal, young people, to do it on your own. But the number one cause for the young boys, young women want to get with the label is what we learned today in a documentary, fame. Didn't you hear the interview what that man was saying? He's saying that the kids willing to sacrifice a lot of their money and sign a lot of these crazy contracts. Why? Impulsive. You know when you sign that shit, the whole world gonna know who I am, but you ain't thinking money. It's niggas in Texas that was making millions out the back of their trunk and nobody knew who they was. And they ended up signing because they was like, well, I want to put the city on the map. But they should have kept it real, man. You just wanted to get yourself famous. You had all the money, you just ain't had the fame. People don't know that fame is something a lot of people want. Imagine if you was richer than a dude, but everybody knew him more than you. Everybody know him, though. Eventually, you with all your money gonna say, man, I got more money than that nigga. And everybody know him, giving him love, and you gonna want to now get the fame. So that's the difference between eating in silence like the people in power. But that's the incentive. There's really no other incentive for a motherfucker to be involved with a major label other than, oh, he just wanted to get famous. Because with the way the internet set up today, you can literally do this shit, you know, yourself. But that's my take on all of this, guys. I gotta get up out of here, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you want to support the work, you know the links you can hit, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace and much